Evan Brooks stood frozen outside room 314, his hand trembling on the door handle, staring at the woman who shouldn't have been there. Unconscious, alone, forgotten. In his other hand, yellow roses meant for someone else. In his chest, a choice he didn't know he was making. Walk away, like he'd walked away from everything else that hurt, or step into someone else's pain when he'd barely survived his own. He chose wrong. Or maybe for the first time in 3 years, he chose right. If you've ever found yourself at the wrong place at the right time, stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this journey reaches. The fluorescent lights of St. Michael's Hospital hummed with the particular frequency of places where time moved differently. Slower in the waiting rooms, faster in the emergency bays, suspended entirely in the ICU, where Evan Brooks now found himself hopelessly lost. He'd been to this hospital exactly twice before. Once when Maya was born 7 years ago, when the world had felt full of impossible promise. Once when Sarah died 3 years ago, when that promise shattered into something he still couldn't sweep up completely. Now he was here for Tom, his former colleague, and one of the few people who'd bothered to check on him during those first terrible months of widowhood. Tom had texted him the room number 314. Routine surgery, nothing serious, but he'd appreciate the company. Evan had stopped at the gift shop, uncomfortable with arriving empty-handed, and settled on yellow roses because they seemed cheerful without being presumptuous. The elevator had deposited him on the 3rd floor, and he'd followed the room numbers down a corridor that all looked identical. Beige walls, motivational posters about healing and hope, the persistent smell of antiseptic trying and failing to mask something more human and vulnerable underneath. 314 should have been on the left. He was almost certain. The numbers on the doors seemed to follow no logical pattern, and after 2 wrong turns, Evan had stopped trusting his sense of direction entirely. He'd become good at being lost these past 3 years. Good at wandering through days without destination. Good at nodding when people spoke without hearing the words. Good at existing in spaces between before and after. He knocked softly on the door marked 314, waited, heard nothing, and eased it open. The room was dim, curtains drawn against the afternoon sun. The light that filtered through cast everything in shades of amber and shadow. There was one bed, one still figure beneath white sheets, and in that first moment, Evan's mind supplied the expected image. Tom, probably sleeping off the anesthesia, probably fine. But the figure wasn't Tom. It was a woman, and she was utterly, devastatingly alone. Evan stood in the doorway, hand still on the handle, his brain scrambling to reconcile what he was seeing with what should have been there. The woman appeared to be in her early 30s, her dark hair spread across the pillow, her face pale in a way that suggested illness rather than sleep. An IV drip fed into her arm. Monitors beeped steadily, translating her life into data points and waveforms. What struck him most wasn't her presence, but the absence surrounding her. No flowers on the nightstand. No get-well cards propped against the water pitcher. No jacket draped over the visitor's chair. No sign that anyone in the world knew she was here or cared that she was fighting whatever battle had brought her to this room. Evan had spent enough time in hospitals to recognize the difference between temporary solitude and fundamental aloneness. This was the latter. He should have backed out immediately, found a nurse, confirmed Tom's actual room number. Instead, he remained frozen in the doorway, staring at this stranger who seemed to embody every fear he'd carried since Sarah died. The fear of suffering invisibly, of fighting alone, of the world continuing to spin while you struggled just to breathe. The roses in his hand suddenly felt absurd and inadequate, but also necessary in a way he couldn't articulate. Before the rational part of his brain could intervene, Evan crossed the room and set the bouquet on the empty nightstand. The yellow petals seemed to glow in the dim light, a small rebellion against the clinical sterility of the space. He stood there for a moment longer, looking at the woman's face. Even unconscious, even pale, there was something striking about her features, a strength in the set of her jaw, a suggestion of determination in the slight furrow between her brows, as if even in sleep she was fighting. "I hope someone's looking out for you," he whispered, unsure why he felt compelled to speak at all. "Everyone deserves that." Then he turned and left, closing the door softly behind him. In the hallway, he finally spotted a nurse and asked for Tom's room. 418. 4th floor. He'd been on the wrong floor entirely. "Thanks," he managed, already moving toward the elevator, trying to shake off the strange encounter. But as he rode up to the correct floor, as he found Tom's room, filled with flowers and cards, and his wife reading a magazine in the visitor's chair, as he made small talk and pretended normalcy, Evan couldn't stop thinking about the woman in 314. Who was she? Why was she alone? And why did seeing her empty room feel like looking into a mirror? Tom was in good spirits, the surgery successful, already complaining about the hospital food and planning his escape. His wife, Jennifer, fussed over him with the comfortable irritation of long marriage, straightening his blankets while insulting his choice of hospital gown. "Evan brought flowers," Tom said, gesturing to the nightstand already crowded with arrangements. "Add them to the collection. I'm running a florist shop out of here." Evan opened his mouth to explain, then closed it. The roses were gone. He'd left them in the wrong room, and something about that felt intentional now, like a choice his subconscious had made before his conscious mind caught up. "Actually, I must have left them downstairs," he said. "I'll grab more next time." "Don't bother," Tom said. "Jennifer's convinced I'm allergic to half of these. Bring Maya by instead. That kid's funnier than morphine." Evan smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "She's got a field trip this weekend, but I'll tell her you said hi." They talked for another 20 minutes, about work, about recovery timelines, about nothing important. Comfortable conversation that required no vulnerability, no truth. Eventually, Jennifer declared Tom needed rest, and Evan took his cue to leave. On his way out, he walked past 314 again. He told himself to keep walking. He'd done his good deed, left the flowers. That was enough. Getting involved in a stranger's crisis when he could barely manage his own life was foolish, but his feet stopped anyway. Through the small window in the door, he could see the yellow roses on the nightstand, bright and defiant. The woman remained unconscious, unchanged, still alone. Evan pulled out his phone, checking the time. Maya wouldn't be home from school for another hour. His mother was picking her up, would keep her entertained until dinner. He had time he didn't need and couldn't fill in any meaningful way. He found himself walking toward the nurse's station. The nurse on duty looked up from her computer, her expression professionally neutral. Her name tag read Patricia. "Can I help you?" "Room 314, Evan said. "The patient there. Does she have family? Visitors?" Patricia's expression shifted slightly, warming with recognition. "You left the flowers." Evan hesitated. "It was a mistake. Wrong room. But I noticed she didn't have any, and I just—" "That was kind of you," Patricia interrupted. "And no, she doesn't. Have visitors, I mean. She was admitted 3 days ago, emergency intake. We haven't been able to reach any family yet." "What's wrong with her?" Patricia shook her head. "I can't share patient information, but—" She glanced around, lowered her voice slightly. "It's nice that someone noticed. Sometimes people slip through the cracks in places like this. We try to catch everyone, but we're human, understaffed, overworked." Evan understood. He was familiar with slipping through cracks, with being overlooked while in plain sight. "What's her name?" "Claire. Claire Monroe." The name settled into him like a fact he'd been waiting to learn. Claire Monroe. Alone in a hospital room, fighting something unknown, with no one to bear witness to her struggle. "Thanks," Evan said quietly. Patricia studied him for a moment, her professional mask slipping enough to show genuine curiosity. "You know her?" "No," Evan admitted, "but maybe someone should." Evan thought about Claire Monroe all through the evening routine with Maya, helping with homework, making dinner, negotiating bedtime. His daughter chattered about her day, about the upcoming field trip to the Science Museum, about her best friend Sophie's new haircut. And Evan listened with the practiced attention of a parent who'd learned to be present even when his mind wandered. Maya was 7 now, small for her age, with Sarah's dark eyes and his stubborn chin. She'd been 4 when her mother died, and sometimes Evan wondered how much she actually remembered versus how much she'd constructed from photographs and stories. She never talked about being sad, never cried for her mother where he could see, and that worried him more than tears would have. "Dad?" Maya was looking at him expectantly, her math homework spread across the kitchen table. Sorry, what? I asked if you could check my long division. Right, yeah. Evan leaned over, scanning the problems she'd worked through. They were all correct, her numbers neat and precise. Perfect, as always. You're smarter than me already. That's what Grandma says, too. Grandma's very wise. Maya grinned, then started packing up her books. Can we watch a movie tonight? Evan glanced at the clock. 7:30. Bedtime was 8. A short one. Deal. They settled on the couch, Maya tucked against his side. Some animated film about talking animals playing on the screen. Evan watched without seeing, his thoughts still in that hospital room. What was it about Claire Monroe that had gotten under his skin so quickly? He didn't know her. He had no responsibility for her. His life was complicated enough without adding a stranger's crisis to the weight he already carried. But he kept seeing that empty nightstand, kept feeling the echo of his own loneliness reflected back at him. When Sarah died, the world had descended with overwhelming attention, casseroles and condolences, visits and vigils, everyone wanting to help, to fix, to make it better. It had been suffocating and necessary in equal measure. Eventually, inevitably, the attention faded. People returned to their own lives, their own problems. The casseroles stopped coming. The phone calls grew less frequent. The world moved on while Evan remained stuck in the amber of his grief. He'd learned that loneliness wasn't the absence of people. It was the presence of misunderstanding, the gap between how you felt and how the world expected you to feel. It was showing up to work with a smile because colleagues didn't know what to do with your sadness. It was telling your daughter everything was fine because 7-year-olds shouldn't have to carry their father's pain. It was existing in plain sight while feeling completely invisible. Maybe that's what he'd recognized in Claire Monroe's empty room. Not just solitude, but invisibility. The particular kind of alone that came from fighting battles no one else could see. The movie ended. Maya had fallen asleep against his shoulder, her breathing deep and even. Evan carried her to bed, tucked her in, kissed her forehead. "Love you, Bug," he whispered. In her sleep, Maya smiled. Evan stood in her doorway for a long moment, watching her chest rise and fall, grateful for this one uncomplicated good thing in his life. Then he retreated to his own room, to the bed that still felt too large, to the silence that had become his constant companion. Before turning out the light, he made a decision he couldn't fully explain. Tomorrow, he'd go back to the hospital. Not to visit Tom. Tom was fine, surrounded by family, well cared for. But to check on Claire Monroe. To make sure those yellow roses hadn't wilted. To bear witness to her fight even if she never knew he was there. It was irrational. It was impulsive. It was probably the first genuine choice he'd made in 3 years. The next afternoon, Evan found himself in the hospital gift shop again, studying the limited selection with more care than the situation warranted. The roses had been an accident, but this, whatever this was, required intention. He settled on a small book, a collection of short stories by a favorite author, something she could read when she woke up, if she woke up. The sales clerk, an elderly woman with kind eyes, rang him up without comment. Room 314 was quieter in the afternoon light. The curtains were still drawn, but thin streams of sun broke through, striping the floor in bands of gold. Claire Monroe looked unchanged, still pale, still unconscious, still alone. The yellow roses remained on the nightstand, their petals beginning to curl at the edges. Evan set the book beside them, then stood awkwardly in the middle of the room, unsure what to do next. In the movies, people talked to unconscious patients, sharing stories and secrets, forging connections across the barrier of consciousness. But Evan had never been comfortable talking to fill silence. Words felt inadequate to the weight of what he was feeling, this strange pull toward a stranger, this need to ensure she wasn't forgotten. Instead, he adjusted the curtains to let in more light. He refilled her water pitcher from the small sink in the corner. Small acts of care that required no explanation. As he was leaving, Patricia appeared in the doorway, a knowing smile on her face. "Back again?" Evan felt heat rise to his face. "Just checking in." "Uh-huh." Patricia moved past him to check Claire's vitals, her movements efficient and practiced. "Her condition's stable. The doctors are optimistic about her waking up in the next few days." "That's good. That's really good." Patricia recorded some numbers on her chart. then turned to face him directly. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why? You said you don't know her. Evan struggled to find words that wouldn't sound crazy. I don't. But 3 years ago, my wife died. And during those first few weeks, I had so many people around me that I wanted to disappear. But eventually, everyone went back to their lives, and I realized that being surrounded by people who don't understand is sometimes lonelier than being alone. He gestured helplessly at Claire. I didn't want her to be alone like that, even if she doesn't know I'm here. Patricia's expression softened completely. I'm sorry about your wife. Thank you. For what it's worth, I think Claire would appreciate what you're doing. When she wakes up, she's going to ask about those flowers, about the book, and I'll tell her someone cared enough to make sure she had them. Don't, Evan said quickly. Don't tell her about me. This isn't about recognition. It's just something I need to do. Patricia studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, your secret's safe with me. It became a routine Evan didn't examine too closely. Every afternoon after dropping Maya at school, before picking her up, he stopped at the hospital. Sometimes he brought flowers, sometimes books or magazines. Once, a soft blanket because the hospital ones looked thin and institutional. He never stayed long. 10-15 minutes at most, just enough to ensure Claire had what she needed, to maintain the small bubble of comfort he was trying to create around her. Patricia became an ally in his strange mission, updating him on Claire's condition, helping him slip in and out without drawing attention from other staff. She never asked questions he couldn't answer, never pushed for explanations he couldn't give. On the 5th day, Patricia met him at the nurse's station before he could reach Claire's room. She's awake, Patricia said, her smile wide. Woke up about an hour ago. Confused but lucid. The doctors are with her now. Evan felt something loosen in his chest. Relief, maybe, or something close to it. That's incredible. It is. And Evan? Patricia lowered her voice. She's been asking about the flowers, the books. She knows someone's been coming. What did you tell her? Nothing specific, just that she had a guardian angel. Evan winced. I'm no angel. Maybe not. But you showed up when no one else did. That counts for something. He knew he should feel good about this. Mission accomplished, crisis averted, time to step back and return to his own life. Instead, he felt an unexpected reluctance to let go of this connection he'd built with an unconscious stranger. Can I see her? Patricia hesitated. I don't think that's a good idea right now. She's still weak, still processing everything. Maybe give it a few days? Evan nodded, knowing it was the right answer even as disappointment settled in his chest. Yeah, of course, just let her know someone's thinking of her. I will. He turned to leave, made it 3 steps before Patricia called his name. Evan, thank you for caring when you didn't have to. The world needs more of that. Evan stayed away for 3 days, giving Claire space to recover, giving himself space to think. But thinking only led to more questions he couldn't answer. What was he doing? Why did this stranger matter so much? And what happened now that she was awake and aware and would inevitably want to know who'd been leaving gifts in her room? On the 4th day, he broke down and returned to the hospital. Not to see Claire, he wasn't ready for that, but to check with Patricia to ensure everything was okay. He found the nurse at her station, looking more stressed than usual, her normally tidy hair slightly disheveled. Rough day? Evan asked. Patricia looked up, her expression clearing slightly when she recognized him. You could say that. We're short-staffed and half the floor is backing up with discharges that should have happened yesterday. How's Claire? Better every day, physically at least. Patricia's expression turned more serious. Evan, we finally reached her emergency contact, a cousin in Seattle. He's not coming. What? Said he barely knows her, hasn't seen her in years, can't afford to fly out. Patricia's voice carried barely concealed frustration. Social workers trying to find other family, but so far, nothing. Claire's being released tomorrow, and she has nowhere to go. Evan felt anger flare in his chest. At the cousin, at the broken systems that allowed people to fall through cracks, at a world that could be so casually cruel. What happens if she has nowhere to go? We'll work something out. Transitional housing, maybe. A shelter, if necessary. She's not in immediate danger anymore, so our hands are tied. Patricia rubbed her temples. I hate this part of the job. Can I help? The words were out before Evan fully considered them. Patricia looked at him with surprise and something that might have been hope. How? I don't know. Money? Is there something she needs that I could provide? Evan, you've already done so much. Not enough, apparently. He pulled out his wallet, extracted his credit card. Whatever she needs for discharge, medication, supplies, whatever. Put it on this. Patricia stared at the card. That's incredibly generous, but please, let me do this. She took the card slowly, handling it like something precious. You're a good person, you know that? Evan shook his head. I'm just someone who knows what it's like to feel alone. Nobody should have to go through that if there's a choice. That evening, Maya asked him why he seemed distracted. They were at dinner, spaghetti, her favorite, and Evan had been pushing pasta around his plate without eating, his mind still at the hospital. Sorry, Bug, just thinking about work stuff. Maya, wise beyond her years, gave him a look that said she didn't quite believe him but wouldn't push. Grandma says thinking too much makes your brain tired. Grandma's probably right. She usually is. Maya twirled spaghetti onto her fork with impressive precision. Dad? Yeah? Are you lonely? The question hit him like a physical blow. What? No, I have you. I know, but like, adult lonely. Sophie's mom says adults need other adults to talk to, not just kids. Evan set down his fork, giving his daughter his full attention. Did Sophie's mom say something to you? No, I just noticed you don't really have friends anymore. Not like before Mom died. The casual way she said it, before Mom died. Like it was just a marker of time rather than the event that cleaved their lives in two. Maybe that was healthy. Maybe she was better at this than he was. I have friends, Evan said, hearing how weak it sounded even as he said it. Name 3. He opened his mouth, closed it. Tom, technically, though they barely saw each other outside work. His mother, who didn't count. Sarah's parents, who drifted away in their own grief. The list was depressingly short. I have you, and he repeated. That's enough. I'm 7, Dad. That's weird. Despite everything, Evan laughed. When did you get so smart? Birth. Maya grinned, then turned serious again. I just want you to be happy, like you were before. Evan reached across the table, squeezed her small hand. I am happy. Being your dad makes me happy. But not all the way happy. She wasn't wrong. He was functional, present, going through the motions of life with competence, if not joy. But all the way happy? He wasn't sure he remembered what that felt like. Hey, he said softly. I'm working on it, okay? These things take time. Maya nodded, apparently satisfied, and returned to her spaghetti. But the conversation stuck with Evan through the rest of the evening, through Maya's bath and bedtime story, through the quiet hours after she was asleep. Maybe that's what had drawn him to Claire Monroe. Not charity or pity, but recognition. 2 people learning to survive in a world that had become strange and hostile, trying to find their footing when the ground kept shifting. He wanted to help her. But maybe, in some way he couldn't articulate, he needed her too. The next afternoon, Evan returned to the hospital with a plan he'd formulated during a sleepless night. He found Patricia at the nurse's station, looking marginally less stressed than the previous day. How is she? Physically ready for discharge. Emotionally? Patricia shrugged. She's scared. Trying not to show it, but scared. Has she asked about the flowers again? Every day. She calls you her mystery visitor. Evan's heart did something complicated in his chest. Patricia, I need to ask a favor. Name it. I want to meet her, but not as the person who's been leaving gifts, just as, I don't know, a volunteer? Someone checking on discharged patients? Patricia frowned. Why the deception? Because if she knows it's me, it becomes about gratitude and obligation and all these complicated things. I just want to make sure she's okay. As a person, not a benefactor. And you think lying is the best way to do that? I think giving her space to make her own choices without feeling indebted is the best way to do that. Patricia considered this, her expression thoughtful. You know what? Fine. But Evan, eventually you're going to have to tell her the truth. I know, just not yet, Patricia sighed. Room 314. She's packing her things now, such as they are. Evan's heart was racing as he approached the room. This was stupid. This was complicated. This was the most alive he'd felt in 3 years. He knocked softly on the door. Come in, a voice called. Claire's voice, hearing it for the first time, soft but stronger than he'd expected. Evan pushed open the door and saw her for the first time awake, sitting on the edge of the bed, dressed in hospital-provided clothes, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, her face still pale, but her eyes bright and alert and impossibly, devastatingly beautiful. Hi, he managed. I'm Evan. I'm with the Patient Services Program, just checking in before your discharge. Claire studied him with an intensity that made him feel transparent, like she could see through his careful lie to the truth underneath. Patient Services, she repeated slowly. Is that a real thing? Very real, he said, hoping he sounded convincing. We help coordinate post-discharge needs, transportation, follow-up appointments, that kind of thing. Huh. She didn't sound entirely convinced, but she also didn't call him out. Well, Evan from Patient Services, I don't need much. I'm pretty self-sufficient. Even as she said it, her eyes drifted to the yellow roses on the nightstand. Wilted now, but still there, still a splash of color in the sterile room. The flowers, Claire said quietly. The books, the blanket. That was you? No, Evan said, the lie bitter on his tongue. That was someone else. I just help with the logistics. Right. She didn't believe him. He could see it in her eyes. But she let it slide, and he was grateful. So where are you headed after discharge? He asked, trying to shift to safer ground. Claire's expression shuddered slightly. I have a few options. The social worker mentioned some difficulty reaching family. My family's complicated. She stood, swaying slightly, and Evan instinctively moved to steady her. Their hands touched briefly, and he felt an electric current of recognition pass between them. Sorry, Claire said, pulling back, still a little weak. That's normal. You've been through a lot. Yeah. She moved to the window, looking out at the city beyond. Can I ask you something, Evan, from Patient Services? Sure. Why do you really do this? Check on strangers, coordinate their discharge. It can't be just a job. The question caught him off guard with its directness. He could deflect, maintain the fiction, keep the distance safe and comfortable. Or he could tell her something true. 3 years ago, I lost my wife, he said quietly, and I learned that being cared for, really cared for, not just processed through a system, makes all the difference. So yeah, it's a job, but it's also, I guess it's also personal. Claire turned from the window, her expression softening. I'm sorry about your wife. Thank you. And thank you for caring, even about strangers. They stood there in the quiet room, two people carrying weight they couldn't share, connected by loss and loneliness and the strange intimacy of honest conversation. I should let you finish packing, Evan said finally, not wanting to leave but knowing he should. Wait, Claire reached into the small bag someone had brought from her apartment. I wanted to thank whoever's been leaving the gifts. Since I don't know who they are, maybe you could pass this along? She held out a small card, handwritten in elegant script. Evan took it, his fingers brushing hers again, that same electric recognition. I will, he promised, knowing he'd read it later, knowing he'd keep it, knowing this was the beginning of something he couldn't name yet. As he left the room, Claire called after him. Evan? He turned. I hope I see you again, outside of hospital logistics. He smiled, genuine warmth flooding through him for the first time in longer than he could remember. I hope so too. Outside the hospital, Evan sat in his car and opened the card Claire had given him. To my mystery visitor, I don't know who you are or why you chose to care about a stranger, but you saved me in ways that had nothing to do with medicine. You reminded me that I'm visible, that I matter, that somewhere in this vast, indifferent world, Someone noticed I was struggling and decided to help. Thank you for the flowers. Thank you for the books. Thank you for the reminder that kindness still exists. I hope someday I can thank you in person. Until then, please know that you made a difference. You made me want to keep fighting." With gratitude, Claire Evan read the note 3 times, each word settling into him like a benediction. Then he carefully folded it and placed it in his wallet, next to a photo of Maya and Sarah, next to the remnants of his old life. Driving home, he thought about wrong doors and right choices, about the difference between running from pain and running toward hope. He thought about Claire's eyes, bright with determination even in weakness. He thought about Maya's question, "Are you lonely?" and realized the answer was changing. He was still lost, still grieving, still figuring out how to live in a world without Sarah. But for the first time in 3 years, he felt like he was walking towards something instead of away from it. And somehow, impossibly, that felt like enough. The card stayed in Evan's wallet for 2 days, a constant weight he was aware of every time he reached for his keys or phone. He'd memorized the words by now, could recite them in Claire's voice, even though he'd only heard her speak a handful of sentences. The handwriting was elegant but slightly shaky, as if she'd written it while still weak, still recovering. And that detail made his chest ache in ways he couldn't fully explain. He hadn't gone back to the hospital. Claire had been discharged, Patricia had confirmed, to a transitional housing facility across town. The social worker had arranged everything: transportation, follow-up appointments, a temporary place to stay while she figured out her next steps. Evan's credit card had covered the medications and supplies, a transaction Patricia had handled discreetly, his anonymity maintained. Mission accomplished. Crisis averted. Time to return to his normal life of work and Maya and the comfortable numbness he'd cultivated over 3 years. Except he couldn't stop thinking about her. It was Thursday afternoon and Evan was supposed to be reviewing quarterly reports at his desk, but instead he was staring at his computer screen without seeing the numbers, his mind replaying that moment in the hospital room when Claire had looked at him and said she hoped to see him again. "Brooks, you with us?" Evan looked up to find his supervisor, Marcus, standing in his cubicle doorway with an expression of patient concern. "Sorry, just distracted." "I can see that. Everything okay? Maya doing all right?" "Maya's great, straight A's, happy, well-adjusted, better than I deserve, honestly." Marcus smiled. "Kids are resilient, and you're doing a good job with her. But..." He paused, then added more carefully, "But how are you doing?" It was a question people had stopped asking somewhere around the 1-year mark of Sarah's death, as if grief had an expiration date and Evan should have moved past it by now. The fact that Marcus was asking now, 3 years later, suggested Evan's distraction was more obvious than he'd realized. "I'm fine," Evan said automatically, then caught himself. "Actually, I don't know. Something happened recently, and I'm trying to figure out what to do about it." Marcus pulled up a chair uninvited, settling in with the ease of someone who'd known Evan for nearly a decade. They'd started at the company around the same time, had grabbed lunch regularly before Sarah died, had drifted into professional cordiality afterward because Evan had pulled away from everyone. "Want to talk about it?" Evan surprised himself by saying yes. He told Marcus about the wrong room, the yellow roses, the weeks of anonymous visits. He told him about Claire's card, about the strange pull he felt toward someone he barely knew, about the guilt of feeling anything beyond grief and duty for the first time since becoming a widower. Marcus listened without interrupting, his expression thoughtful. When Evan finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "So what's stopping you?" Marcus asked finally. "What do you mean?" "From seeing her again, from being honest about who you are and what you did. What's the actual obstacle here?" Evan struggled to articulate the fear that had kept him frozen for 2 days. "I don't want her to feel obligated, like she owes me something because I bought her flowers and paid for her medication. That's not what this is about." "Okay, so tell her that." "It's more complicated than that." "Is it?" Marcus leaned forward. "Evan, I'm going to say something, and I need you to really hear me. You've been in survival mode for 3 years, just getting through each day, taking care of Maya, making sure the basics are covered. That's necessary. That's important. But at some point, survival has to become living. And living means taking risks, letting people in, possibly getting hurt again. I know that intellectually, but not emotionally. No, Evan admitted. Not emotionally. Marcus stood, clapped him on the shoulder. For what it's worth, Sarah wouldn't want you stuck like this. She'd want you to be happy, to take chances, to let yourself feel things again, even scary things. After Marcus left, Evan sat with those words, testing their truth. Sarah had been fearless in life, quick to laugh, quick to love, quick to leap into uncertainty with the confidence that everything would work out. She'd been the one to ask him out on their first date, the one to suggest they get married after only 6 months of dating, the one who'd insisted they could handle parenthood even when Evan was terrified. She would have walked right up to Claire Monroe and introduced herself without hesitation. She wouldn't have hidden behind anonymity and careful distance. She would have chosen connection over safety every single time. Evan pulled out his phone and texted Patricia, "Can you give me the address of Claire's transitional housing? I want to check in on her." The response came quickly. "Thought you'd never ask. Sending it now. And Evan? Good luck." The address arrived a moment later, followed by another message. "She's been asking about her mystery visitor. Just thought you should know." Evan stared at his phone, his heart doing complicated things in his chest. Then he shut down his computer, grabbed his jacket, and left work 2 hours early for the first time in 3 years. The transitional housing facility was in a part of town Evan rarely visited, not quite run down, but definitely tired, the kind of neighborhood that had seen better days and was still hoping they might return. The building itself was a converted apartment complex, clean but institutional, with security doors and a check-in desk that suggested the residents needed both protection and supervision. Evan gave his name to the woman at the desk, explained he was there to visit Claire Monroe, and waited while she made a call to verify. After a moment, she nodded and handed him a visitor badge. "Third floor, apartment 312. Elevator's broken, so you'll have to take the stairs." Evan climbed 3 flights, his nervousness increasing with each step. What was he doing here? What was he going to say? "Hi, I'm the stranger who's been leaving you gifts in the hospital, and also I lied to you when we met, but I come in peace?" He stood outside apartment 312 for a full minute, his hand raised to knock, frozen by indecision and fear and the sudden awareness that knocking on this door meant choosing something, committing to something, and he'd spent 3 years avoiding exactly that kind of choice. Before he could knock, the door opened. Claire stood there in jeans and an oversized sweater, her dark hair loose around her shoulders, her face still pale, but stronger than it had been in the hospital. She looked at him without surprise, as if she'd been expecting him. "Evan from Patient Services," she said, a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Funny running into you here. I wanted to check on you, make sure you're settling in okay. That's very dedicated of you, making house calls after discharge. I'm thorough." Clearly, she stepped back holding the door open. "You want to come in, or are we going to have this conversation in the hallway?" The apartment was small, a studio with a kitchenette, a bathroom barely visible through a half-open door, a bed in one corner, and a small table with 2 chairs in the other. There were no personal items visible, no photographs or books, or anything to suggest someone actually lived here rather than just existed in transit. Claire followed his gaze. "It's temporary, until I figure out my next move." "It seems nice, clean. It's a roof. I'm grateful for that." She gestured to the table. "Sit. I was just making tea. You want some?" "Sure, thanks." She moved to the kitchenette with careful precision, still not quite at full strength, and Evan watched her fill a kettle and set it on the small stove. The domesticity of the moment felt surreal. This woman he'd watched unconscious for days, now making him tea in a tiny apartment, the space between them charged with things neither of them was saying. "So," Claire said, retrieving 2 mugs from a cabinet, "are you going to tell me the truth, or are we going to keep pretending you're just a very invested hospital volunteer?" Evan's heart stopped. "What?" Claire turned to face him, leaning against the counter, her expression gentle but knowing. "Patricia told me, yesterday, about the flowers, the books, the medication, about you. But I asked her not to. She felt I deserved to know, and she was right." The kettle began to whistle, and Claire poured water over tea bags in both mugs, the homey ritual at odds with the tension crackling in the air. "So, Evan Brooks, the man who walked into the wrong room and decided to stay. Why?" She brought the mugs to the table and sat across from him, waiting. Her eyes were impossibly direct, the kind of gaze that demanded honesty, that wouldn't accept careful deflection or comfortable lies. Evan wrapped his hands around the mug, letting the heat ground him. Then he told her the truth. 3 years ago, my wife Sarah died. Suddenly. An aneurysm. She was 32, healthy, vibrant, and then one morning she just wasn't. Our daughter was 4. I was completely unprepared for any of it. The grief, the single parenting, the way the world kept spinning like nothing had changed when everything had changed. Claire listened without interrupting, her expression softening. For a long time I was just surviving, going through the motions, making sure Maya was okay, showing up to work, existing. And then I walked into your room by mistake, and I saw you there, alone, unconscious, with no one looking out for you. And it was like looking at my own fear reflected back at me. The fear of suffering invisibly, of not mattering, of being forgotten. So you decided to make sure I wasn't forgotten. I guess so. I know it sounds crazy. I know it's probably crossing all kinds of boundaries. It's the kindest thing anyone's done for me in years, Claire interrupted softly. Maybe ever. Evan looked up, surprised by the emotion in her voice. You want to know why I was alone in that hospital room? Claire asked. Why no family came? Why I had no visitors? She took a sip of tea, gathering herself. Because I've spent the last 10 years making myself invisible, pushing people away, building walls so high that eventually everyone stopped trying to climb them. Why? Because it felt safer than getting hurt again. She smiled, but it was tinged with sadness. My parents died when I was 21. Car accident. One minute I had this whole support system, this family that loved me, and the next minute I was completely alone. The extended family tried for a while, cousins, aunts, uncles, but I was so angry, so determined not to need anyone, that I pushed them all away. And then I spent a decade telling myself I was fine, that I didn't need connection, that independence was the same thing as strength. What changed? I got sick, ovarian cancer, stage 2. Caught it early, thankfully, but the treatment was brutal. And suddenly I was facing my own mortality, completely alone. And I realized that all my independence, all my careful walls, they hadn't protected me from anything. They just isolated me, made my fight harder than it needed to be. Evan felt recognition wash through him. Different circumstances, same lesson, same loneliness disguised as self-sufficiency. I'm sorry, he said, about your parents, about the cancer, about all of it. I'm sorry about your wife. Claire reached across the table, her hand stopping just short of his. And I'm grateful for what you did. Not just the practical things, the flowers and books and medication, but the reminder that I'm not as alone as I thought I was. That someone cared enough to show up. Their hands bridged the final distance, fingers intertwining, and Evan felt something shift in his chest. Not the sharp pain of grief, but something gentler. Hope, maybe. Or possibility. They sat like that for a long moment. Two people who'd survived different storms, finding unexpected shelter in each other's company. So what happens now? Claire asked finally. I don't know, Evan admitted. I'm not very good at this. At letting people in. At taking risks. Me neither. She smiled. Maybe we can be bad at it together? Evan laughed, surprised by how good it felt. That might be the most honest proposition I've heard in years. They talked for 2 hours, the conversation flowing with unexpected ease. Claire told him about her job as a graphic designer, work she'd done freelance from her apartment before getting sick, work she was hoping to return to once she regained her strength. Evan told her about Maya, about the joys and terrors of single parenting, about the way his daughter had become both his anchor and his reason to keep going. I'd like to meet her, Claire said. Someday, if that's okay. I'd like that too, but slowly. Maya's been through a lot. Lost her mom so young. I'm protective about who I bring into her life. Of course. I understand. But I'd like to see you again, Evan added quickly. Outside of transitional housing apartments, maybe coffee or dinner. I'd like that. Claire glanced at the clock on the wall. Though I should warn you, I'm not exactly in a great place right now. Recovering from cancer, living in temporary housing, trying to rebuild a life I let fall apart. I'm kind of a mess. I'm a widower with unresolved grief who's been emotionally frozen for 3 years and lied to you when we first met. I'm also kind of a mess. We're quite a pair. We really are. They exchanged phone numbers, made tentative plans for coffee that weekend, and when Evan left an hour later, he felt lighter than he had in years. Driving home, he caught himself smiling for no reason, and the unfamiliarity of the expression made him realize how long it had been since he'd felt genuine happiness rather than just the absence of pain. Maya was at his mother's house for dinner, giving Evan time to process everything that had happened. He picked her up around 7, and she chattered excitedly about helping her grandmother make cookies, about a book they'd read together, about plans for the weekend. "Dad, you seem different," Maya observed as they drove home. "Different how?" "I don't know, less sad maybe?" Evan glanced at his daughter in the rearview mirror. When had she gotten so perceptive? When had he become so transparent? "I met someone today," he said carefully. "A friend. Someone I'd like you to meet eventually, if that's okay." Maya's eyes widened. "Like a girlfriend? Like a friend who's a girl, maybe more, eventually, but we're taking things slow. Is she nice?" "She's very nice." "Does she like kids?" "I think so." Maya was quiet for a moment, processing. Then, "Would Mom be mad?" The question hit Evan like a physical blow. He pulled into their driveway and turned off the car, then twisted in his seat to look at his daughter directly. "No, Bug. Mom would want us to be happy. Both of us. She'd want me to have friends, to have people in my life who care about me. And she'd want you to have people who care about you too." "You're sure?" "I'm absolutely sure. Your mom loved us so much. That kind of love doesn't want us to be alone forever. It wants us to be okay, to be happy, to keep living even when she can't." Maya unbuckled her seatbelt and climbed into the front seat, wrapping her small arms around Evan's neck. "I miss her." "I know, sweetheart. Me too. But I'm glad you have a friend. You've been lonely." "I have you." "I know, but Grandma's right. Adults need adult friends." Maya pulled back, her expression serious. "When can I meet her?" "Soon, I promise." That night, after Maya was asleep, Evan sat in the living room with a photo album he hadn't opened in over a year. Pictures of Sarah, of their life together, of the family they'd built. He studied her face, the way she laughed with her whole body, the way she looked at him and Maya with such fierce, uncomplicated love. "I'm trying," he whispered to the photograph. "I'm trying to keep going, to let someone in. I hope that's okay." The photo didn't answer, of course, but Evan felt something settle in his chest anyway. Permission, maybe, or forgiveness, or just the simple acknowledgement that life continued, that love could exist in multiple forms, that moving forward didn't mean leaving her behind. He texted Claire before going to bed. "Thank you for today, for being honest, for giving me a chance, despite everything." Her response came quickly. "Thank you for showing up, for caring, for reminding me what connection feels like." Then a moment later, "I'm nervous about this, about letting someone in, about getting it wrong." Evan smiled, typing back, "Me too, but maybe being nervous together is better than being safe alone." "Definitely better," Claire replied. "See you Saturday?" "Saturday. It's a date." The week passed in a blur of normal routine punctuated by text messages that made Evan's heart do complicated things. Claire sent pictures of her recovery progress, short walks around the neighborhood, meals she was cooking in her tiny kitchenette, small victories that marked her return to health. Evan sent updates about Maya, about work, about the ordinary moments of life that felt less ordinary when shared with someone who cared. They talked on the phone twice, long, rambling conversations that stretched past midnight, covering everything and nothing. Claire's voice became familiar, comforting, something he looked forward to hearing. She made him laugh with stories about her graphic design clients, with observations about the other residents in the transitional housing, with the dry humor that suggested she saw the absurdity in her situation without being defeated by it. "So what's your daughter like?" Claire asked during one of these late-night calls. "Beyond straight A's and cookie-making skills." Evan leaned back in bed, smiling at the ceiling. "She's incredible, smart, funny, perceptive in ways that sometimes scare me. She looks like Sarah but acts like me. Quiet, thoughtful, a little too serious sometimes. She sounds wonderful. She is, and she's handling all of this, the loss, the changes, better than I am. Kids are resilient in ways adults forget how to be. What does she know about me? That I met a friend, that you're nice, that I'd like her to meet you when the time is right. And what did she say? She asked if you like kids and if her mom would be mad. Claire was quiet for a moment. Yes. What did you tell her? About her mom. That Sarah would want us to be happy. That love doesn't demand loneliness. That we're allowed to keep living. Do you believe that? Evan considered the question carefully. I'm learning to. It's hard. There's guilt and fear, and this voice in my head that says I'm betraying her memory by feeling anything for someone else. But then I think about what Sarah would actually say if she were here, and I know she'd tell me to stop being an idiot and let myself be happy. Claire laughed softly. She sounds like she was a good person. The best. You would have liked her. I think I would have too. Saturday arrived with unseasonably warm weather, the kind of late autumn day that felt like a gift. Evan met Claire at a coffee shop near the park, arriving early because nervousness made him punctual. He ordered a black coffee and sat at a table by the window, watching people pass by, trying to calm the butterflies in his stomach. When Claire walked in, his heart did a complicated flip. She was wearing a green dress that brought out the color in her eyes, her hair falling in soft waves around her shoulders, and she looked healthier than she had in the hospital or even in her apartment. Recovery looked good on her. She spotted him and smiled, that same gentle expression that had disarmed him from the beginning, and crossed the cafe to join him. Hi, she said, sliding into the chair across from him. Hi, you look great. Thanks, I feel almost human again. She glanced at his coffee. What are you drinking? Black coffee. Boring, I know. Practical. I like practical. She stood. I'm going to get something ridiculously sweet and impractical. Be right back. Evan watched her order, a caramel latte with whipped cream, and felt something warm expand in his chest. This was happening. He was on a date. The first since Sarah died. The first in over a decade, and it felt terrifying and right in equal measure. Claire returned with her drink and settled back into her chair. So, how do we do this? I haven't been on a date in years. Are there rules, a protocol? If there are, I don't know them either. Perfect. We can make it up as we go. They talked for an hour in the cafe, then walked to the park, then kept walking as the conversation flowed and the afternoon stretched into evening. Claire told him about growing up in Oregon, about her parents who'd encouraged her art from a young age, about the scholarship to design school that had brought her to the city. Evan told her about meeting Sarah in college, about their whirlwind romance, about the life they'd built together before it was cut short. Do you ever resent it? Claire asked as they sat on a bench overlooking a small pond. The unfairness of losing her so young? Every day, Evan admitted. But I also know that resentment doesn't change anything. She's still gone. I'm still here. Maya still needs a parent. So I can be angry about it, or I can try to make something good out of what's left. That's incredibly mature. It's survival. I'm not sure it's the same thing. Claire reached over and took his hand, the gesture feeling natural now, comfortable. I think you're being too hard on yourself. From what I can see, you're doing an amazing job. With Maya, with your life, with letting yourself try again despite the fear. I'm terrified, Evan confessed. Of getting this wrong. Of hurting Maya. Of hurting you. Of getting hurt myself. Me too. But I'm also tired of letting fear make all my decisions. I spent 10 years choosing safety over connection, and it didn't protect me from anything. It just made me lonely. So what do? We try. We're honest with each other, we take it slow, and we accept that it might not work out, but at least we'll know we were brave enough to try. Evan looked at her. This woman who'd been a stranger weeks ago, who'd become an anchor without him realizing it was happening. I can do that. Good. Because I really like you, Evan Brooks, and I'd like to see where this goes. I really like you too, Claire Monroe. They kissed then, soft and tentative, and Evan felt something in him that had been frozen for 3 years begin to thaw. It wasn't forgetting Sarah. It wasn't moving on as if she'd never existed. It was making space for something new while honoring what had been, letting past and present coexist without demanding that one erase the other. When they finally pulled apart, Claire was smiling. That was nice. Yeah, it really was. They stayed in the park until the sun began to set, talking and laughing and existing in the easy comfort of people who understood each other's scars. When Evan finally walked Claire back to the transitional housing facility, it felt too soon, like the day had passed in minutes instead of hours. Thank you for today, Claire said at the door to her building, for taking a chance on this, on us. Thank you for giving me a reason to try. Same time next week? Absolutely. Evan drove home with music playing for the first time in years, singing along to songs he'd forgotten he knew, feeling more alive than survival had allowed. When he got home, his mother was just putting Maya to bed, and he thanked her and sent her on her way before climbing the stairs to his daughter's room. Maya was still awake, reading under her covers with a flashlight. Busted, Evan said, sitting on the edge of her bed. She grinned, unrepentant. How was your date? It was good, really good. Are you going to see her again? I am. Good. Maya set down her book. You were smiling when you came in. I heard you singing in the car. You haven't done that in forever. I know. I like when you're happy, Dad. Evan pulled his daughter into a hug, overwhelmed by gratitude for this small, wise person who'd been his reason to keep going when everything else felt impossible. I like when I'm happy too, Bug, and I'm working on it, for both of us. For all three of us, Maya corrected. You, me, and Claire. We'll see. It's still early. I have a good feeling about it. After Maya was asleep, Evan sat in the living room with his phone, scrolling through the photos Claire had sent over the past week. Her smile, her recovery, her life slowly rebuilding. Then he opened his photo album and looked at pictures of Sarah, at the life they'd shared, at the love that had shaped him into who he was. Both things could be true. He could love what he'd lost and hope for what might come. He could honor Sarah's memory and build something new with Claire. He could be a widower and also a man learning to live again. His phone buzzed with a text from Claire. Made it home safely. Can't stop smiling. Thank you for a perfect day. Evan replied. Thank you for reminding me what perfect days feel like. Sweet dreams. Outside, the city continued its rhythm, indifferent to one man's small awakening. But inside, in a house that had felt like a mausoleum for 3 years, something was changing. Light was seeping in through cracks Evan hadn't known existed. And for the first time since Sarah died, he felt something beyond survival. He felt hope. Hope, Evan was learning, was a fragile thing. It grew in the spaces between fear and action, fed by small moments of courage and threatened constantly by the voice in his head that warned him not to get comfortable, not to trust that good things could last. The weeks following that first date unfolded with careful optimism. Evan and Claire saw each other twice a week, coffee on Wednesdays, dinner on Saturdays, creating a rhythm that felt sustainable, manageable, safe. They texted daily, sharing the mundane details of their lives with the earnestness of people learning each other's patterns. Claire sent photos of her design work, layouts for small business websites, and logos that showcased her talent. Evan sent pictures of Maya's latest art project, her Halloween costume, the cookies they'd burned together while attempting to follow Sarah's old recipe. They didn't talk about the future. Neither of them was ready for that conversation. Instead, they existed in the present, letting each moment build on the last without demanding it lead anywhere specific. But the present had a way of insisting on forward movement. It was mid-November when Claire's lease at the transitional housing was set to expire. She'd been putting off the decision, applying for apartments she couldn't quite afford, looking for roommate situations that felt too complicated, avoiding the reality that her options were limited and her savings nearly depleted. Evan found out during one of their Wednesday coffee dates. Claire had been quieter than usual, distracted, stirring her caramel latte without drinking it. What's wrong? He asked. Nothing. Everything. I don't know. She set down her spoon. I have to be out of the housing facility by the end of the month. 4 weeks to find a place, but everything I can afford is either too far from my clients or in neighborhoods that aren't safe, and everything that's decent is beyond my budget. Wait, what about your cousin in Seattle? Could he help? Claire laughed bitterly. The one who couldn't be bothered to visit me in the hospital? I'd rather sleep in my car. You're not going to sleep in your car. Then I'm running out of options pretty fast. Evan's mind raced through possibilities, solutions, offers he knew he should make carefully or not at all. They'd been dating for less than 2 months. Suggesting she move in would be rushing things, would complicate everything, would potentially scare her off or create obligations neither of them was ready for. But the alternative, Claire struggling alone, potentially ending up somewhere unsafe, felt impossible to accept. What if, he started slowly, and I want you to know you can say no without it being weird, but what if you stayed with us? Temporarily, just until you get back on your feet financially. Claire stared at him. Evan, we barely know each other. I know, and like I said, you can absolutely say no, but I have a spare bedroom. It's small, but it's yours if you need it. No strings attached, no expectations. Just a safe place to land while you figure things out. What about Maya? You said you wanted to take things slow with her, protect her from getting attached too quickly. I did say that, and I meant it. But Maya's been asking to meet you, and honestly, I think having you around might be good for both of us. As long as we're clear about boundaries, about the fact that you're a friend staying with us, not, he paused, searching for the right words, not something permanent yet. Yet? I like you, Claire. A lot. And I want to see where this goes. But you're right that it's early, and rushing into something we're not ready for could ruin what we're building. So this would be practical, helpful. 2 friends helping each other out. Claire was quiet for a long time, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. I don't want to be a burden. You wouldn't be, and you could contribute, help with groceries, utilities, whatever feels fair. This isn't charity. It's just people looking out for each other. Like leaving flowers in hospital rooms? Exactly like that. She smiled then, tentative but genuine. Can I think about it? Of course. Take all the time you need. But when Claire texted him that night, are you sure about this? Really, truly sure? Evan didn't hesitate. I'm sure. Come stay with us. Let us help. The response took longer, and Evan imagined Claire staring at her phone, weighing risks and benefits, fighting the same instinct toward self-sufficiency that had kept her isolated for years. Finally, okay. Thank you. I promise I won't stay long, just until I get stable. Stay as long as you need, Evan wrote back, and meant it. Moving day arrived on a Saturday that felt more like winter than autumn, the sky heavy with clouds that threatened snow. Claire didn't have much. A few boxes of clothes, her computer and design equipment, books, and personal items that fit easily into Evan's car. The lightness of her possessions spoke to years of intentional minimalism or unintentional loneliness, and Evan suspected it was more the latter than the former. Maya had been prepared carefully for Claire's arrival. Evan had explained that his friend Claire needed a place to stay for a while, that she'd be sleeping in the guest room, that she was someone important to him, and he hoped Maya would make her feel welcome. Maya had responded with the pragmatic acceptance of children who were used to adapting, asking only if Claire liked board games and if she was allergic to cats. We don't have a cat, Evan had pointed out. I know, but maybe we should get one now that there's more people. The logic was 7-year-old perfect, and Evan had promised to consider it. Now, as he pulled into the driveway with Claire beside him and her entire life packed into the trunk, Evan felt a flutter of nervousness he hadn't anticipated. This was real. This was his carefully controlled world opening up to include someone new, someone unpredictable, someone who could bring joy or pain or most likely both. You okay? Claire asked, noticing his hesitation. Yeah, just hoping this works out. Me too. They carried boxes inside, and Evan showed Claire to the guest room, small but comfortable, with a window that looked out over the backyard and enough space for a bed, a desk, and a small bookshelf. It had been Sarah's craft room once, then a storage space, then nothing at all. Making it livable again felt like reclaiming something he'd thought was lost. It's perfect, Claire said, setting down the box she was carrying. Truly, thank you. Before Evan could respond, he heard the front door open and Maya's voice calling out, Dad, we're home! His mother appeared in the doorway a moment later, Maya bouncing beside her, and both of them stopped short when they saw Claire. You must be Claire, his mother said, her tone carefully neutral in the way that suggested she'd have opinions later, in private. I'm Ellen, Evan's mother. It's so nice to meet you, Claire said, crossing the room to shake Ellen's hand. Evan's told me wonderful things about you. Has he? Ellen glanced at her son with a raised eyebrow. All good, I hope? Absolutely all good. Maya, less encumbered by social niceties, stepped forward boldly. Are you Dad's girlfriend? Maya, Evan started, but Claire laughed. I'm your dad's friend. Is that okay? I guess. Do you like board games? I love board games. Good, because Dad's terrible at them, and I need someone who can actually challenge me. Maya, Evan said again, but he was smiling now. Ellen stayed for coffee, making polite conversation while clearly assessing Claire with the protective scrutiny of a mother who'd watched her son suffer. Evan could see his mother cataloging details, the way Claire smiled when she talked about her design work, the careful distance she maintained from Evan in front of Maya, the genuine interest she showed when Maya explained the complex rules of her favorite card game. Eventually, Ellen stood to leave, pulling Evan aside in the kitchen while Claire and Maya played cards in the living room. She seems nice, Ellen said quietly. She is nice. And you're sure about this? Having her live here? I'm not sure about anything, Mom. But she needed help, and I was able to help. That has to count for something. Ellen studied her son's face, and Evan saw the worry there, the fear of watching him get hurt again. Just be careful. Your heart's been through enough. I know. I am being careful. And Maya, she's already getting attached. I can see it. Maya's resilient, and Claire's good with her. I think this could be good for everyone. Ellen sighed, then pulled him into a hug. I just want you to be happy, sweetheart. You and Maya both. I know. We're working on it. After his mother left, Evan found Claire and Maya deep in a card game, both of them laughing as Maya explained a rule she'd clearly just invented. You can't just make up rules, Claire protested. It's my house, my rules. Actually, it's your dad's house. Dad lets me make up rules. Right, Dad? Evan settled onto the couch beside them. I plead the fifth. They played cards until dinner, then Evan made pasta while Claire helped Maya set the table, and the domesticity of it all felt surreal and wonderful and terrifying. This was what normal families did, cooked together, ate together, existed in comfortable proximity. But they weren't a normal family. They were a widower, his daughter, and a woman recovering from cancer, playing at domesticity while navigating the complicated reality underneath. After dinner, Maya asked if Claire wanted to see her room, and Claire said yes with genuine enthusiasm. Evan cleaned up the kitchen, listening to their voices drift down from upstairs, Maya showing off her artwork, her books, her collection of rocks from various field trips. When they came back down, Maya was holding Claire's hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. Claire said she'd teach me graphic design, Maya announced. She has all these cool programs on her computer. If that's okay with your dad, Claire added quickly. It's absolutely okay. That sounds like fun, Maya beamed. Can we start tomorrow? How about we let Claire settle in first? She just moved in today. Fine, Maya said with exaggerated resignation. But soon. Bedtime came and Evan went through the usual routine with Maya, brushing teeth, picking out clothes for tomorrow, reading a chapter from their current book. As he was turning out the light, Maya caught his hand. Dad, I like Claire. Yeah? I'm glad. She's sad sometimes, though, I can tell. Evan's heart clenched. When had his daughter become so perceptive? She's been through a lot, Bug. Just like we have. Sometimes people carry sadness even when they're happy. Like you. Yeah, like me. I think having her here will be good, for all of us. I think so too. And Dad? It's okay if you love her. I won't be mad. The words hit Evan like a physical blow. Maya, we're not. It's okay, Maya repeated firmly. Mom would want you to be happy. And Claire makes you smile more. I notice things. Evan pulled his daughter into a hug, overwhelmed by her wisdom and her generosity and the unfairness of a child having to navigate such complicated emotions at 7 years old. I love you so much, he whispered. I love you too. Now go hang out with Claire. I'm sleepy. Downstairs, Evan found Claire in the kitchen, making tea with the comfortable familiarity of someone who'd already memorized where everything was kept. Want some? She offered. Sure. They took their mugs to the living room, settling on opposite ends of the couch, with careful distance between them. The house was quiet, peaceful in a way that felt new and fragile. Maya's amazing, Claire said. You've done an incredible job with her. I've mostly just tried not to screw her up too badly. You're too hard on yourself. She's happy, well-adjusted, empathetic. Those things don't happen by accident. She told me it's okay if I love you, Evan said quietly. That Sarah would want me to be happy. Claire set down her mug. That's a lot for a 7-year-old to process. She's had to process a lot. What did you say? I didn't get a chance to say much. She declared it was okay and then told me she was sleepy. Evan smiled despite the complicated emotions swirling in his chest. But it made me think about what I want, what this is becoming. And what is it becoming? I don't know. Something important, something that scares me because I know how badly it can hurt to lose someone you love, but also something I don't want to run from just because it's scary. Claire moved closer, closing the distance between them. I'm scared too, of getting hurt, of hurting you, of Maya getting attached and then me having to leave, of all the ways this could go wrong. So what do? We try. Just like we said, we're honest with each other. We communicate, and we accept that being scared doesn't mean we shouldn't move forward. Evan kissed her then, soft and slow, and felt the rightness of it settle into his bones. This wasn't betraying Sarah. This wasn't forgetting or replacing or moving on as if the past didn't matter. This was choosing to live fully, to love again despite the fear, to honor what he'd lost by building something new. When they pulled apart, Claire was smiling. I should probably go to bed. It's been a long day. Okay, but Claire, I'm really glad you're here. Me too. She stood, started toward the stairs, then turned back. Evan, thank you. For the flowers, for the second chance, for opening your home, for all of it. Thank you for letting me. The first few weeks of cohabitation passed with surprising ease. They established routines. Claire made breakfast while Evan got Maya ready for school. Evan cooked dinner while Claire helped Maya with homework. They took turns doing dishes and cleaning up. Claire contributed money for groceries and utilities despite Evan's protests, insisting on pulling her weight. She kept her belongings confined to the guest room, respecting the boundaries they'd agreed on, maintaining the fiction that this was temporary even as it started to feel permanent. Maya thrived with Claire's presence. They spent hours together working on graphic design projects, Claire patiently teaching her the basics of layout and color theory, while Maya created increasingly elaborate designs for imaginary products. On weekends, they cooked together, experimented with recipes, filled the kitchen with laughter and flour and the comfortable chaos of creativity. Evan watched it all with gratitude and growing attachment, and a fear that hummed beneath everything like a constant frequency. This was what he'd been afraid to want, a full life, a full heart, the vulnerability that came with caring deeply about people who could be lost. But it was also what he'd been missing without realizing it. The house felt alive again, full of voices and laughter, and the particular energy that came from people choosing to build something together. At work, Marcus noticed the change immediately. You look different, he said one afternoon, stopping by Evan's desk. Happy, maybe? Maybe, Evan admitted. The woman from the hospital, things are going well? She's living with us, temporarily. It's good. Complicated, but good. Marcus grinned. Complicated good is still good. I'm happy for you, man. But happiness, Evan was learning, was always shadowed by fear. And fear had a way of manifesting when you least expected it. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon in early December. Evan was at work reviewing reports when his phone rang with an unfamiliar number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Mr. Brooks, this is Dr. Patel from St. Michael's Hospital. I'm calling about Claire Monroe. Evan's heart stopped. What's wrong? Is she okay? She's fine physically, but she had a follow-up appointment this morning for her cancer screening, and we've found some abnormalities that we'd like to investigate further. She listed you as her emergency contact. What kind of abnormalities? I prefer to discuss the details with Miss Monroe present. Can you come to the hospital? She's quite upset, and I think having you here would help. Evan was already grabbing his jacket, already moving. I'll be there in 15 minutes. The drive to the hospital was the longest of Evan's life. His mind raced through worst-case scenarios, each more terrifying than the last. Cancer returning, spreading. Claire sick again, suffering again, possibly dying, and he'd just found her, just started to let himself care, just begun to imagine a future that included her. He found her in an examination room, sitting on the paper-covered table with her arms wrapped around herself, her face pale and streaked with tears. Dr. Patel stood nearby, his expression professionally compassionate. "Claire," Evan said, crossing to her immediately. She looked up, and the fear in her eyes broke his heart. "They found something, on the scan. It might be nothing, but it might be—" "We don't know anything yet," Dr. Patel interrupted gently. "The scans show some markers that warrant further testing. It could be scar tissue from the previous treatment. It could be inflammation. Or it could be a recurrence. We won't know until we run more tests." "When?" Evan asked. "We can schedule a biopsy for later this week. Results would take a few days after that." Claire was shaking, her breath coming in short gasps that suggested panic. Evan took her hand, felt how cold her fingers were. "We'll figure this out," he said firmly. "Whatever it is, we'll handle it." I can't do this again," Claire whispered. "The treatment, the uncertainty, the fear. I barely survived it the first time." "You're not alone this time. That's different." Dr. Patel excused himself to give them privacy, and Evan pulled Claire into his arms, feeling her tears soak into his shirt. "I'm so scared," she said against his chest. "I know, me too. What if it's back? What if I have to go through chemo again? What if—" She couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't voice the worst fear. "Then we fight it, together. But we don't know anything yet, so let's not assume the worst until we have to." They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other in the sterile examination room, two people who'd both learned that life could change in an instant, that safety was an illusion, that the only choice was between running from fear or facing it together. Eventually, Claire pulled back, wiping her eyes. "I should call work, cancel my projects. I can't focus on design when—" "Don't," Evan interrupted. "Don't put your life on hold until you know. Keep working, keep moving forward. Don't let fear steal any more from you than it has to." "How are you so calm about this?" "I'm not calm, I'm terrified. But I learned something when Sarah died. That fear doesn't change outcomes, it just robs you of the present. So we can spend the next week terrified and miserable, or we can try to live as normally as possible until we know what we're dealing with." Claire studied his face, then nodded slowly. "Okay. Normal. I can try normal." They scheduled the biopsy for Friday, and Evan drove Claire home in silence, both of them lost in their own thoughts. When they pulled into the driveway, Claire didn't move to get out of the car. "Evan, if this is too much, if you want to step back, protect yourself and Maya from getting more involved, I'd understand." He turned to face her fully. "Is that what you want?" "No. But I also don't want to drag you through my crisis when you've already been through so much." "Claire, listen to me. I'm not going anywhere. Whatever happens, whatever we find out, I'm here. You're not alone in this." "You can't promise that." "Yes, I can. Because I'm choosing to. Because you matter to me. Because running from hard things doesn't protect anyone. It just makes them lonelier." Fresh tears spilled down Claire's cheeks. "I don't deserve you. That's not how this works. We don't earn care by being perfect or by never having problems. We deserve it just by being human. And you, Claire Monroe, are very human and very deserving." That night they told Maya together. Evan had wanted to shield his daughter from the worry, but Claire had insisted on honesty, on not hiding the reality of what they were facing. Maya listened with the serious expression she wore when processing difficult information, then asked the most important question. "Are you going to die?" Claire didn't flinch from the directness. "I hope not. But I'm sick, and we don't know yet how sick. They're doing tests to find out." "What happens if you're really sick?" "Then I'll get treatment, and your dad will help me, and hopefully I'll get better." "What if you don't get better?" Evan started to intervene, but Claire squeezed his hand, signaling she had this. Then I'll fight as hard as I can for as long as I can. But Maya, even if the worst happens, that doesn't mean caring about each other was a mistake. Love is always worth it, even when it hurts. Maya thought about this, her face serious. Mom died really fast. Dad said she didn't get to say goodbye. At least if you're sick, we'd get to say goodbye. If we had to. The logic was heartbreaking and perfect. Evan pulled his daughter close, overwhelmed by her wisdom and her courage. You're right, Bug, but let's hope we don't have to say goodbye for a very long time. I hope so too. I just started teaching Claire about rocks. Despite everything, they all laughed. The moment broke the tension, reminded them that life continued even in the face of fear, that there was still room for joy and normalcy and 7-year-old priorities. The week before the biopsy passed in a strange suspension of time. They maintained their routines, school and work and dinners together, but everything felt heightened, more precious, shadowed by uncertainty. Evan caught himself memorizing small moments, Claire laughing at one of Maya's jokes, the three of them watching a movie on the couch, the way Claire's hand fit in his like it belonged there. He was falling in love with her, had probably already fallen. And the timing was terrible and perfect and beyond his control. The night before the biopsy, after Maya was asleep, Evan found Claire standing in the backyard despite the cold, looking up at the stars. He joined her, wrapping a blanket around both their shoulders. Can't sleep? He asked. Too much thinking. Want to share? Claire was quiet for a moment. I was thinking about my parents, how they died suddenly, without warning, and how angry that made me. I wanted a chance to say goodbye, to tell them everything I needed them to know. And now I might get that chance, and I'm realizing that goodbye isn't actually what I wanted. I wanted more time. I wanted forever. I know. When Sarah died, did you get to say goodbye? No, she left for work one morning, kissed me and Maya, said she'd see us at dinner. And then she was gone. No warning, no last words, just absence. Which is worse, knowing or not knowing? Evan considered the question. I don't think either is worse. They're just different kinds of hard. But Claire, we don't know anything yet. You might be fine. This might be nothing. And if it's not nothing, then we fight, together. She turned to face him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. I love you. I need you to know that, in case I don't get another chance to say it. Evan's heart felt too large for his chest. I love you too, and you're going to have plenty of chances to say it, but I'm glad you said it now. They kissed under the stars, holding each other against the cold and the fear and the uncertainty, two people choosing love despite every reason not to, choosing hope when despair would have been easier. The biopsy was scheduled for Friday morning. Evan took the day off work, drove Claire to the hospital, sat with her through the waiting, the procedure, the recovery. She was groggy afterward, the sedation making her sleepy and vulnerable, and Evan stayed close, holding her hand, reminding her she wasn't alone. Results in 3 to 5 business days, the nurse said as they prepared to leave. Dr. Patel will call as soon as we know anything. 3 to 5 business days. An eternity compressed into medical speak. Time measured in fear and waiting and trying to maintain normalcy while your world hung in balance. They drove home in silence. Claire fell asleep in the passenger seat, her head resting against the window, and Evan drove carefully, protectively, as if gentle driving could somehow keep the universe from delivering more pain. Maya was waiting when they got home, Ellen supervising from the kitchen. His daughter ran to Claire immediately, hugging her carefully. Did it hurt? A little, but I'm okay. Good, because I made you a card. Maya produced a construction paper card covered in glitter and stickers, with a hand-drawn picture of 3 people holding hands under a rainbow. Inside, in careful 7-year-old handwriting, "Get well soon. We need you." Claire read it and started crying, pulling Maya into a fierce hug. Thank you, sweetie. This is the best medicine. Ellen caught Evan's eye, her expression knowing and sad and proud all at once. She'd raised him to be kind, to show up, to care deeply, even when it was hard. She'd also watched him survive devastating loss. Now she was watching him risk that pain again, and her fear for him was palpable, but so was her approval. That weekend, they existed in careful suspension. They played board games and watched movies and made cookies that turned out surprisingly well. They didn't talk about the biopsy or the results or what might come next. They just lived, moment to moment, practicing the art of presence in the face of uncertainty. Monday came, Tuesday, Wednesday. The call came Thursday afternoon while Evan was at work. Claire's name lit up his phone screen, and he answered before the first ring finished. "The results are in," Claire said, her voice steady but tight. "Dr. Patel wants to see me tomorrow morning to discuss them." "Did he say anything else?" "No, just that we should come in." "We'll be there." "What time?" 9. "I'll pick you up at 8:30. That night, neither of them slept. Evan lay in his bed, Claire in hers, one room away, both of them staring at ceilings and fighting fear and waiting for morning to either confirm their nightmares or release them back into regular life. At some point after midnight, Evan heard his bedroom door open softly. Claire stood in the doorway, silhouetted by the hallway light. "Can I sleep here?" she asked quietly. "I don't want to be alone tonight." "Of course." She climbed into bed beside him, and he wrapped his arms around her, feeling her heart beat against his chest. They didn't speak. There was nothing to say that fear hadn't already articulated. They just held each other and waited for dawn. Morning arrived gray and cold. Evan made coffee while Claire got ready, and they drove to the hospital in silence, both of them too nervous to eat, too anxious to make small talk. Dr. Patel's office was warm and professional, designed to deliver both good news and bad with equal gentleness. He greeted them with the small smile, gestured for them to sit, and pulled up Claire's file on his computer. "Thank you for coming in," he started. Evan reached for Claire's hand, felt her fingers grip his tightly. Dr. Patel turned to face them directly, his expression softening. The biopsy results came back clear. No cancer. What we saw on the scan was scar tissue from your previous treatment. You're still in remission. The words took a moment to register. Evan felt Claire's hand go slack in his, heard her sharp intake of breath. "I'm okay," she whispered. "You're okay. We'll want to continue monitoring you regularly, but right now, everything looks good." Claire started crying, her whole body shaking with relief. Evan pulled her close, feeling his own tears spill over, feeling the tension that had wound tight for 2 weeks suddenly release. "Thank you," he managed to say to Dr. Patel. "Thank you so much." "You're very welcome. Take care of each other." They walked out of the hospital into weak December sunshine, both of them dazed and grateful and alive. Claire stopped on the sidewalk, turned her face to the sun, and laughed with pure joy. "I'm okay," she said again, testing the words. "I'm actually okay." Evan kissed her then, right there on the sidewalk, not caring who saw, just grateful beyond words that she was here, that they had more time, that fear hadn't won. "Let's go home," he said. "Let's go tell Maya." They drove home fast, breaking every speed limit, rushing toward the good news, toward their life, toward the future that had suddenly opened back up. Maya was waiting on the front steps, Ellen beside her, both of them tense with worry. The moment they saw Evan and Claire's faces, relief flooded through them. "You're okay?" Maya asked, running down the steps. "I'm okay," Claire confirmed, catching Maya in a hug. "I'm perfectly okay." "Good, because we planned a celebration dinner just in case, and it would have been really sad to eat celebration food if there was nothing to celebrate." They all laughed, the tension breaking completely, and Evan felt something settle in his chest. This was his family now, imperfect and complicated and built from loss and love in equal measure. This was what choosing life looked like, what choosing hope made possible. That night, they celebrated with Maya's promised dinner and cake from the bakery and laughter that filled every corner of the house. Ellen stayed, and they told stories and made plans and existed in the pure relief of crisis averted. Later, after everyone had gone to bed, Evan and Claire stood in the kitchen cleaning up, working in comfortable synchronicity. "Evan?" Claire said softly. "When I thought I might be sick again, when I thought I might lose all this, you, Maya, this life we're building, it made me realize something." "What's that?" that I don't want this to be temporary. I don't want to leave when I get stable. I want to stay. If you'll have me. Evan set down the dish he was washing, turned to face her fully. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. I love you. I love Maya. I love the life we're building together. And I know it's fast, and I know it's complicated, but I also know that time isn't guaranteed, and I don't want to waste what we have being careful when we could be living. I love you too. And yes, stay. Stay as long as you want. Stay forever if you'll have us. Claire smiled, that brilliant expression he'd first seen weeks ago in a hospital room. Forever sounds perfect. They sealed it with a kiss, and somewhere in the house, in her bedroom where she was supposed to be asleep, Maya smiled in the darkness, knowing that sometimes the best families were the ones you chose, the ones you built from courage and hope and the willingness to try again despite the fear. Forever, as it turned out, started with small decisions that accumulated into permanence. The guest room gradually transformed from temporary lodging into Claire's actual bedroom, her design equipment spreading across the desk, her books filling the shelves, her presence seeping into every corner until the house no longer remembered what it had been like without her. December melted into January, and with the new year came a shift in their relationship from careful cohabitation to genuine partnership. They stopped referring to Claire as a temporary guest. Maya started introducing Claire as my dad's girlfriend, with the casual authority of a child who'd already decided the outcome. And Evan found himself thinking about futures plural instead of just surviving one day at a time. But permanence, he was learning, required more than just love and good intentions. It required vulnerability, the kind that exposed old wounds and forced you to trust that another person wouldn't use your scars against you. The conversation happened on a Saturday morning in late January. Maya was at a friend's house for a sleepover, giving Evan and Claire rare time alone. They'd slept late, made breakfast together, and were lingering over coffee when Claire brought up the subject he'd been avoiding. We should probably talk about what this actually is, she said, her fingers wrapped around her mug. What we're building, where it's going. Evan felt his chest tighten. Okay. I know we said we're together, that I'm staying, but we haven't really defined what that means long term. And I think we need to, especially for Maya's sake. She needs to know what she can count on. What do you want it to mean? Claire set down her mug, met his eyes directly. I want us to be a family. Not just 3 people living in the same house, but an actual family. I want to be part of Maya's life in a real way, not just as Dad's girlfriend. I want us to make decisions together, build a future together, commit to each other in a way that feels permanent. Like marriage? Eventually, maybe. But I'm not proposing right now, she added quickly, seeing his expression. I just want to know we're moving in the same direction. That you see a future where I'm not just visiting your life, but actually part of it. Evan stood, moved to the window, his back to Claire as he processed her words. She was asking for exactly what he wanted and exactly what terrified him. Commitment meant vulnerability. Vulnerability meant risk. Risk meant the possibility of loss, and he'd already lost more than he knew how to survive once. Evan? Claire's voice was soft behind him. Talk to me. Tell me what you're thinking. He turned to face her. I'm thinking that I love you more than I knew I could love anyone again. I'm thinking that you and Maya together are the best thing that's happened to me since Sarah died. And I'm also thinking that every time I imagine a future with you, I can't stop thinking about how quickly that future could disappear. Because of my cancer. Because of everything. Cancer, car accidents, aneurysms, all the random chaos that takes people away without warning. I know it's not rational. I know I can't protect us from the universe by keeping emotional distance. But that doesn't make the fear go away. Claire crossed the kitchen, stood in front of him, took both his hands in hers. You're right. I could get sick again. You could get hit by a bus tomorrow. Maya could... She stopped, not wanting to voice that particular fear. Any of us could be gone in an instant. That's the terrible truth of being alive. But Evan, look at what we'd miss if we let that fear win. Look at what you would have missed if you'd walked past my hospital room and never looked back. I'd have missed everything. Exactly. So yes, loving me is a risk. Loving anyone is a risk. But the alternative is existing without living, and you've already tried that. You spent 3 years in that prison. Do you really want to go back? No, but I also don't know if I can survive losing someone I love again. You can. You did. You would. But more importantly, you don't have to think about surviving loss right now. You just have to think about choosing life, choosing us, choosing to be present for all the moments we do have instead of grieving moments that haven't been lost yet. Evan pulled her close, buried his face in her hair, felt her heartbeat steady and strong against his chest. I'm so afraid of losing you. I know. I'm afraid of losing you too, but we love each other anyway. That's what makes it brave. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other in the quiet kitchen. Two people who'd learned that safety was an illusion, choosing connection anyway. When they finally pulled apart, Evan felt something shift inside him. Not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. Okay, he said. Okay? Okay, let's do this. Let's be a family. Let's make it real and permanent and everything that terrifies me. Because you're right. The alternative is worse. Claire smiled, that brilliant expression that still made his heart do complicated things. Yeah? Yeah, but I need you to be patient with me when I get scared, when I pull back or panic or start catastrophizing about all the ways this could end badly. I can do that. As long as you're patient with me when I do the same thing. Because I'm scared too, Evan. I'm terrified of getting sick again, of becoming a burden, of letting you and Maya down. You could never let us down. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Because you show up every day, even when it's hard. That's all any of us can do. They sealed the decision with a kiss, and when they pulled apart, Claire was grinning. So, family meeting later? Make it official with Maya? She's going to be insufferable about this. You know that, right? She's been campaigning for us to be together since the day you moved in. I'm counting on it. When Maya returned from her sleepover that evening, bouncing with sugar-fueled energy and stories about her friend Sophie's new puppy, they called her into the living room for what Evan described as an important conversation. Maya's eyes went wide with the particular mix of curiosity and concern that children mastered early. Am I in trouble? No, Bug. Nothing like that. We just wanted to talk to you about our family. Maya looked between Evan and Claire, then broke into a knowing smile. You're getting married. What? No, I mean, not yet. How did you? You're both acting weird and happy. That's what people do before they get engaged. Sophie's mom told me. Claire laughed. Sophie's mom is very observant. But no, we're not getting engaged right now. We just wanted to talk about us being a real family, the three of us together. Aren't we already a family? We are, Evan said. But we wanted to make sure you're okay with that. With Claire being a permanent part of our lives, being more than just Dad's girlfriend. Maya considered this with the seriousness she brought to important decisions. Would she be my new mom? The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. Evan started to answer, but Claire put a gentle hand on his arm. I could never replace your mom, Claire said carefully. Your mom will always be your mom, and nothing changes that. But I could be someone else who loves you and takes care of you, like a bonus parent, if you want that. What would I call you? Whatever feels right to you. Claire is fine. Or we could figure out something else together. Maya was quiet for a long moment, her face scrunched in concentration. Then she looked up at Claire with eyes that were far too old for 7. Would you leave if things got hard? Like if I was bad, or if you got sick again, or if we didn't have enough money? Claire's eyes filled with tears. No, sweetheart, I'm not going anywhere, I promise. People break promises sometimes. You're right, they do. And I can't control everything that might happen in the future, but I can promise you that I'm choosing to be here, that I love you and your dad, and that I'll fight to stay part of this family no matter what challenges we face. Maya seemed satisfied with this answer. She crossed the room and hugged Claire tightly, then pulled Evan into the embrace too, creating a small circle of 3. Okay, Maya said against their shoulders, we can be a real family, but I still want a cat. Despite the emotional weight of the moment, they all laughed. Trust Maya to negotiate additional terms. We'll think about the cat, Evan promised. That's parent speak for no, Maya observed sagely. It's parent speak for maybe. I'll take it. The conversation marked a turning point. After that night, they stopped testing the boundaries of their relationship and started living into it fully. Claire helped Maya with school projects and attended parent-teacher conferences. Evan and Claire made decisions about the house together, about Maya's schedule, about their shared finances. They introduced Claire to Evan's friends, his extended family, the social circles that had slowly contracted during his years of grief. Not everyone was comfortable with the speed of their relationship. Sarah's parents, who Evan had maintained a careful distance from since her death, expressed concern when he finally told them he was seeing someone. "It hasn't even been 4 years," Sarah's mother said over the phone, her voice tight with emotion Evan recognized as grief disguised as judgment. "I know, and I'm not trying to replace Sarah, but I'm also not trying to live in permanent memorial to her. She wouldn't have wanted that." "You don't know what she would have wanted." "Actually, I do. She told me once, after her friend's husband died, that if anything ever happened to her, she'd want me to find happiness again, that she couldn't stand the thought of me being alone." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then, more quietly, "We just miss her so much." "I miss her too, every day. But missing her doesn't mean I can't also love someone else. The heart's bigger than we give it credit for." "What's she like?" "This Claire? She's kind. She's been through her own struggles. She's good with Maya. She makes me want to be present instead of just surviving." Another pause. "We'd like to meet her. When you're ready." "I'd like that too." The meeting happened in February, a Sunday brunch at Evan's house that felt like navigating a minefield of emotions and expectations. Sarah's parents arrived with visible tension, their eyes scanning the house for changes, for evidence of their daughter being erased. But Claire had been careful about that. She'd asked Evan to keep photos of Sarah visible, to maintain the memories rather than hiding them. So when Sarah's mother saw pictures of her daughter still displayed prominently, saw that Claire wasn't trying to pretend Sarah had never existed, something in her expression softened. Maya helped too, chattering enthusiastically about Claire's graphic design lessons, about the projects they were working on together, about how Claire was teaching her to cook Sarah's favorite recipes from the old recipe cards they'd found in the kitchen. "She's making sure I remember Mom," Maya explained earnestly to her grandparents. "She asked me to tell her stories about Mom all the time, and she says Mom sounds like she was really cool." Sarah's father had been silent through most of the meal, but at this, he looked up at Claire with something approaching approval. "That's very thoughtful of you." "Sarah's part of this family's story," Claire said simply, "and she always will be. I'm not here to replace her or erase her. I'm just grateful to be part of what comes next." The visit ended better than it started, with tentative plans to get together again, with Sarah's mother hugging Claire and whispering, "Thank you for taking care of them," before leaving. After they'd gone, Evan found Claire in the kitchen, washing dishes with shaking hands. "You okay?" he asked. "That was terrifying. You were perfect." "I was honest. I don't know how to be anything else." "That's why you were perfect." March brought warmer weather and Maya's 8th birthday, which they celebrated with a party in the backyard. Claire had spent weeks planning it, coordinating with Maya on themes and decorations and guest lists with the dedication of someone who'd never had the chance to be involved in a child's life before. The party was chaotic and joyful, filled with children running everywhere and parents making small talk and Maya glowing with happiness at being the center of attention. Evan watched Claire navigate it all with easy grace, helping kids with games, cutting cake, making sure everyone felt included. This was what family looked like, he realized. Not perfect or simple or without complications, but real and present and chosen every day. As the party wound down and parents collected their sugar-hyped children, Marcus pulled Evan aside. "She's good for you," he observed, nodding toward Claire, who was helping Maya open presents. "Yeah, she really is. You thinking about making it official?" "What, marriage?" "That's generally what making it official means." Evan watched Claire laugh at something Maya said, watched the easy affection between them, and felt certainty settle in his chest. "Yeah, I am. I just need to figure out the right time." "There's no right time. There's just the time you choose." The words stayed with Evan through the rest of the evening, through cleanup and Maya's bedtime and the quiet hours after. He found Claire on the back porch, wrapped in a blanket against the spring chill, looking up at the stars. "Successful party?" he asked, settling beside her. Very successful. Maya's already planning next year's. Apparently she wants a sleepover with 10 friends. 10? Absolutely not. That's what I said. She negotiated down to 8. Still no. Claire laughed, leaning into him. She's going to be a lawyer someday, or a hostage negotiator. They sat in comfortable silence, and Evan felt the weight of the decision he'd been circling for weeks. This was it. This was the moment to choose fear or courage, safety or life. Claire? Marry me. She pulled back, staring at him with wide eyes. What? Marry me. I don't have a ring yet. I didn't plan this, but I also don't want to wait for the perfect moment, because I'm learning that the perfect moment is just the one where you're brave enough to ask. So marry me. Build this life with me officially. Be Maya's bonus mom and my partner and part of this family in every legal and permanent way possible. Claire's eyes filled with tears. Evan, I know it's fast. I know it's probably crazy. I know all the rational reasons to wait, but I also know that I love you, that I want you in my life forever, that every day with you is better than surviving without you. So marry me, please. Yes, Claire said, laughing and crying simultaneously. Yes, of course, yes. I love you. I want this. I want all of it. They kissed under the stars, sealing the promise, and Evan felt something he hadn't felt since before Sarah died, absolute certainty that he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The next morning, they told Maya over breakfast. She'd been eating cereal and half watching cartoons when Evan cleared his throat. Bug, we have some news. Maya muted the TV, sensing importance. Good news or bad news? Very good news. Claire and I are getting married. The cereal spoon clattered into the bowl. Maya's face went through a rapid series of emotions, surprise, joy, calculation, before landing on pure delight. I knew it, she shouted, jumping up from the table. I told Sophie. I told Grandma. I knew you were going to get married. You're happy about it? Claire asked. Are you kidding? This is the best thing ever. Can I be in the wedding? Can we get a cat now? Can I help plan it? Can we have it in the backyard? One thing at a time, Evan interrupted, laughing. Yes, you'll be in this wedding. We'll talk about the cat. And yes, you can help plan it. Maya threw herself at both of them, wrapping her arms around as much as she could reach. This is the best day of my whole life. Looking at his daughter's face, at Claire's smile, at the family they were becoming, Evan had to agree. They decided on a small wedding, immediate family and close friends only, in the backyard where they'd built so many memories already. Claire wanted simple and meaningful rather than elaborate and stressful. Maya wanted to wear a fancy dress and have an important role. Evan just wanted it to happen before fear had time to make him second-guess the decision. They set the date for late May, giving them 2 months to plan. Ellen helped with logistics, clearly thrilled that her son was choosing happiness again. Sarah's parents offered to contribute to the cost, a gesture that felt like blessing and acceptance. And Maya threw herself into wedding planning with the intensity she brought to everything she cared about. But in the quiet moments, when the excitement faded and reality set in, Evan still felt the familiar flutter of fear. What if something went wrong? What if Claire got sick again? What if he was jinxing their happiness by formalizing it? What if? The panic attack came 3 weeks before the wedding. Evan woke up at 2 a.m, his heart racing, his chest tight, unable to breathe properly. He stumbled to the bathroom, trying not to wake Claire, and sat on the floor with his head between his knees, fighting for air. Claire found him there 10 minutes later, still struggling to breathe, tears streaming down his face. Hey, I've got you, she said, settling beside him on the bathroom floor. Breathe with me. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. That's it. You're okay. You're safe. It took 20 minutes for Evan's breathing to normalize, for the panic to recede enough that he could speak. I'm sorry, he managed. Don't apologize. What triggered it? I don't know. I was dreaming about the wedding, and then suddenly I was dreaming about your funeral, and I couldn't tell which was the future and which was just fear, and he couldn't finish the sentence. Claire pulled him close, let him cry against her shoulder. You're catastrophizing again. Your brain is trying to protect you from potential pain by creating worst-case scenarios. I know it's not rational, but what if something does happen? What if we get married and then I lose you too? Then you'll survive it, just like you survived losing Sarah. It will be terrible and painful and unfair, but you'll survive because that's what you do. But Evan, listen to me. You can't live your whole life in fear of potential loss. That's not living. That's just existing in a constant state of pre-grief. How do you do it? How do you not think about the cancer coming back every single day? I do think about it every day. Every time I have a headache or feel tired or have any symptom that could be anything. But I also know that if I let that fear control my life, the cancer wins even if it never comes back. So I choose to live fully in the time I have rather than grieving time I might lose. I want to do that. I just don't know how. You practice every day. You notice when the fear starts spinning out of control and you bring yourself back to the present. What's actually happening right now, not what might happen someday. What's happening right now is I'm sitting on a bathroom floor having a breakdown 3 weeks before my wedding. And I'm sitting here with you, and Maya's asleep down the hall, and we're all healthy and safe and together. That's what's real. The rest is just your brain trying to protect you from ghosts. Evan took a shaky breath. I love you. I love you too, and I'm going to marry you in 3 weeks, and it's going to be wonderful, and we're going to build a beautiful life together. And yes, someday one of us will probably lose the other because that's how life works. But that someday isn't today. Today we're both here. Today we get to choose each other. Today we choose each other, Evan repeated, letting the words settle into truth. They sat on the bathroom floor until Evan felt steady enough to stand, then went back to bed and held each other until morning came. And when morning did come, Evan practiced what Claire had taught him, focusing on what was real rather than what was feared, choosing presence over catastrophe, living instead of just surviving. The 3 weeks before the wedding passed in a blur of final preparations and mounting excitement. Maya practiced walking down the aisle with a basket of flower petals she'd insisted on making herself. Claire found a simple dress that made her look radiant. Evan wrote vows that he rewrote 17 times, trying to capture everything he felt in words that wouldn't sound inadequate. The night before the wedding, following tradition they'd decided to honor, Claire stayed at Ellen's house while Evan and Maya had the house to themselves. They ordered pizza and watched Maya's favorite movie, and when it was time for bed, Maya looked up at her father with unusual seriousness. Dad, are you scared about tomorrow? Evan thought about lying, about protecting his daughter from his adult anxieties. But Claire had taught him the value of honesty, even when it was uncomfortable. A little scared, he admitted, but mostly excited. Why? Are you scared? A little. Everything's changing. Change can be good, though. Look at how much better things are since Claire came into our lives. I know, but what if we mess it up? What if she decides she doesn't want to be a family anymore? Evan pulled Maya close. She's not going anywhere, Bug. Tomorrow we're making promises to each other that we intend to keep, forever promises. Like you and Mom made? Exactly like that. And yes, sometimes things happen that we can't control. But the promise itself is real. The love is real, and that's what matters. Maya nodded against his chest. I'm glad you're marrying her. I think Mom would be glad too. Yeah, Bug. I think she would. The wedding day arrived with perfect weather. Sunny, but not too hot. A gentle breeze carrying the scent of the flowers Ellen had planted weeks ago in preparation. The backyard had been transformed with simple decorations, white chairs for the handful of guests, an arch covered in climbing roses where Evan and Claire would exchange vows. Evan stood under that arch in his best suit, Marcus beside him as best man, watching Maya scatter flower petals down the makeshift aisle with solemn concentration. She was wearing a dress she'd picked out herself, feeling very grown up and important in her role. Then the music started, not a traditional wedding march, but the song he and Claire had danced to in the kitchen one random evening, the song that had become theirs without them planning it, and Claire appeared. She was beautiful in the simple way that took his breath away, her dress elegant without being fussy, her smile radiant, her eyes locked on his as she walked toward him. Ellen walked beside her, having offered to stand in as the person to give Claire away, and Evan felt his throat tighten with emotion. This was real. This was happening. This woman who'd been a stranger 6 months ago was about to become his wife, his partner, Maya's bonus mother, the person he'd build the rest of his life with. The ceremony was short and meaningful. The officiant, a friend of Ellen's who'd known Sarah and gave the moment the weight it deserved, spoke about love and choice and the courage it took to open your heart after loss. Then it was time for vows. Evan went first, his hand shaking slightly as he held Claire's, his voice steady despite the emotion. Claire, 6 months ago I walked into the wrong room and found you. Or maybe it was the right room all along and I just didn't know it yet. You reminded me that surviving isn't the same as living. You taught me that love isn't about guarantees or safety. It's about showing up every day and choosing each other despite the fear. You've been patient with my grief, gentle with my daughter, and brave enough to build a family with a man who was convinced he'd used up his chance at happiness. I promise to choose you every day. I promise to be present instead of perfect. I promise to love you through the easy times and the hard times, through health and sickness, through joy and sorrow. I promise to be the kind of partner who sees your strength and your vulnerability and honors both. Thank you for taking a chance on us. Thank you for staying. I love you. Claire's eyes were bright with tears as she began her vows. Evan, I spent 10 years building walls because I thought they'd protect me. Then I got sick and ended up in a hospital room, completely alone, and realized that all my protection had just isolated me. And then you showed up, a stranger who cared enough to leave flowers for someone he didn't know. You saw me when I was invisible to everyone else. You chose to stay when you could have walked away. You and Maya taught me that family isn't just blood. It's the people who show up, who care, who choose each other every single day. I promise to honor the past while building our future. I promise to love Maya as fiercely as I love you. I promise to be honest about my fears instead of letting them control me. I promise to show up, even when it's hard, even when I'm scared, even when the easy thing would be to pull away. You gave me a second chance at life, at love, at belonging. I promise not to waste it. I love you. I love our family, and I can't wait to see what we build together. The officiant pronounced them married, and Evan kissed Claire as their small gathering of family and friends erupted in applause. Maya cheered loudest of all, jumping up and down with pure joy. The reception was simple, a meal catered by their favorite local restaurant, cake from the bakery where they'd gone on their first date, music playing from a speaker while people talked and laughed and celebrated. Sarah's parents had come, bringing a gift that made Evan's eyes water, a photo album they'd made of Sarah with a note inside that read, "We're so grateful Claire is honoring her memory while building something new. Welcome to the family." As the sun began to set, Evan found himself standing at the edge of the celebration, watching Claire dance with Maya to a silly song, both of them laughing, and he felt Marcus appear beside him. "You did good, man," Marcus said. "Yeah, I really did. Sarah would be proud of you for choosing to keep living, for letting yourself love again." "I hope so. I know so. She'd want you to be this happy." The party continued into the evening, and as it finally wound down and the last guest departed, Evan and Claire and Maya found themselves alone in the backyard, surrounded by the remnants of celebration. "Best day ever," Maya declared, already half asleep on her feet. "Best day ever," Claire agreed, wrapping an arm around her. Evan looked at his family, his wife, his daughter, the life they'd built from loss and love and courage, and felt something he hadn't felt in 4 years. Not just happiness, but peace. The certainty that he was exactly where he belonged, with exactly the people he was meant to be with. "Come on," he said, gathering them both close. "Let's go home." And they did, the three of them walking into the house together, a family not by accident, but by choice, not perfect, but real, and absolutely, completely whole. The house felt different the morning after the wedding, though nothing physical had changed. Same furniture, same photographs on the walls, same coffee maker brewing the same brand of coffee. But everything had shifted in ways both subtle and profound. Claire's toothbrush wasn't a temporary guest in the bathroom anymore. The mail that arrived would be addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Brooks. The emergency contact forms at Maya's school would list Claire as a parent, not just a friend staying at the house. Permanence, Evan realized as he watched Claire make breakfast while still wearing her pajamas and the simple gold band on her finger, wasn't about grand gestures or dramatic changes. It was about these small moments of ordinary domesticity, the accumulation of daily choices to stay, to build, to belong. "You're staring," Claire observed without turning around, flipping pancakes with practiced ease. "Just appreciating my wife." "Your wife, that's going to take some getting used to." "Good used to or weird used to?" "Very good used to." She plated the pancakes and brought them to the table where Evan sat with his coffee. "Where's Maya?" Still sleeping, the excitement wore her out. She was amazing yesterday, so grown up and responsible. She's been practicing her flower girl walk for weeks. I think she took it more seriously than we took the actual wedding. Claire laughed, settling into the chair beside him. "Speaking of the wedding, I've been thinking about something." "That sounds ominous." "Not ominous, just important." She took a breath, choosing her words carefully. "I want to formally adopt Maya, if that's okay with you, and with her, obviously. But I want to be her parent legally, not just emotionally. I want the paperwork to match the reality." Evan set down his coffee, his heart doing complicated things in his chest. "You're serious?" "Completely serious. I love her, Evan. Not because she's your daughter, or because it's expected, or because I'm trying to replace Sarah. I love her because she's Maya, brilliant and funny and kind and so much stronger than any 8-year-old should have to be. And I want to commit to her the same way I committed to you yesterday, forever, legally, without reservation." Claire, that's incredible. But we should ask her first, make sure she wants that." "Agreed. I wouldn't do anything without her consent. But if she says yes, then yes. Absolutely yes. I can't think of anything I'd want more than for you to be her mother in every possible way." They waited until Maya woke up, let her have breakfast, and shake off the sleepiness before broaching the subject. She was at the table drawing elaborate designs for what she called future graphic design projects, when Claire cleared her throat. "Maya, your dad and I want to talk to you about something important." Maya set down her colored pencils immediately, her expression shifting to serious attention. "Okay. You know how yesterday we became a family officially, with the wedding?" "Yeah, I was there. I had an important role." "You absolutely did. Well, I was wondering if you'd be okay with making our family even more official. I'd like to adopt you, which means I'd be your mom legally, not just as someone who lives here and loves you. It would mean we're bound together forever in a way that no one could undo." Maya was quiet for a long moment, her face unreadable. Then, in a small voice, "Would I have to call you Mom?" "Only if you want to. You can keep calling me Claire, or we can figure out something else together. The name doesn't matter as much as the relationship." "What about my real mom? Would adopting mean I'm forgetting her?" Claire reached across the table, took Maya's hand gently. "Your real mom will always be your mom. Sarah will always be the person who gave birth to you and loved you first. Nothing changes that. But people can have more than one mom, just like they can love more than one person. Your heart's big enough for both of us. Do you promise you won't leave, even if things get hard or I'm bad or something bad happens?" "I promise. Adoption is forever. It's a legal promise that I'm your parent no matter what. Through good times and hard times, through easy days and difficult ones, I'm not going anywhere." Maya looked at Evan. "Dad, what do you think?" "I think it would be wonderful. But this is your choice, Bug. No pressure either way." Maya turned back to Claire, studying her face with the intensity children brought to important decisions. "Can I think about it?" "Of course. Take all the time you need." But Maya didn't need much time. Later that afternoon, while Claire was working on a design project in her office, Maya appeared in the doorway where Evan was reading. "Dad, I decided." "Yeah?" "I want Claire to adopt me. I want her to be my mom, my second mom. Is that okay?" Evan pulled his daughter into a hug, his heart so full it hurt. "It's more than okay. It's perfect." "Should we tell her now?" "I think she'd like that." They found Claire upstairs, and Maya launched herself at her with the enthusiasm she brought to everything she cared about. "Yes, I want you to adopt me. I want you to be my mom." Claire caught her, holding tight, and Evan saw tears streaming down his wife's face. "Really? You're sure?" "Really sure. Can we start the paperwork today?" "We can definitely start the paperwork soon, but Maya, thank you. Thank you for trusting me with something so important." Thank you for wanting to be my mom, even though you didn't have to be. Oh, sweetheart, I absolutely had to be. Loving you isn't optional. It's just what happens when someone as amazing as you exists in the world. The adoption process, they discovered, was bureaucratic and time-consuming, but not complicated. Since Sarah had passed away and there was no other legal parent to contest it, and since Claire was now Evan's spouse, the court viewed it as a straightforward step-parent adoption. They filed the paperwork in June, attended a hearing in August where the judge asked Maya directly if this was what she wanted, and received the final decree in September, just as Maya was starting third grade. The day the adoption became official, they celebrated with dinner at Maya's favorite restaurant, a pizza place with an arcade that was too loud and too chaotic, but made her radiantly happy. Watching Maya play skee-ball with Claire, both of them laughing and competing with cheerful intensity, Evan felt the last piece of his broken heart slot back into place. This was what healing looked like. Not forgetting the past or pretending Sarah had never existed, but building a present that honored what came before while embracing what came next. But life, as Evan had learned, had a way of testing your peace right when you thought you'd found it. The call came in October, early evening on a Tuesday. Evan was helping Maya with a science project while Claire prepared dinner, their usual routine humming along with comfortable predictability. His phone rang with a number he didn't recognize, and he almost didn't answer. "Mr. Brooks, this is Dr. Patel from St. Michael's Hospital." Evan's stomach dropped. Dr. Patel was Claire's oncologist. The only reason he'd be calling Evan directly would be, "Is Claire okay? She missed her 6-month checkup appointment last week. I've tried calling her, but she hasn't returned my messages. I'm calling you because she listed you as her emergency contact, and I'm concerned." Evan looked towards the kitchen where Claire was chopping vegetables, humming along to music playing from her phone. She didn't mention missing an appointment. According to our records, she rescheduled it twice before simply not showing up. "Mr. Brooks, I don't want to alarm you, but given her medical history, regular monitoring is critical. If she's avoiding checkups, I'll handle it. Thank you for calling." Evan ended the call and stood frozen for a moment, his mind racing. Why would Claire avoid her checkup? Was she experiencing symptoms she hadn't told him about? Was she scared of what they might find? Or had she simply forgotten in the busy chaos of wedding planning and adoption proceedings and building their life together? He found her in the kitchen, still humming, still chopping vegetables with the casual contentment of someone whose biggest concern was whether they had enough garlic for the recipe. "Claire, can we talk for a minute?" She looked up, read something in his expression, and set down the knife. "What's wrong?" "Dr. Patel just called. You missed your 6-month checkup." The color drained from Claire's face. "He called you?" "He's worried. I'm worried. Why didn't you tell me you'd missed the appointment?" Claire turned away, busying herself with the vegetables again. "It's not a big deal. I've been feeling fine. I'll reschedule." "You've rescheduled twice already. Claire, what's going on?" "Nothing's going on. She stopped, her shoulders sagging. "I don't want to know." "Don't want to know what?" "If it's back. If I'm sick again. Everything's so perfect right now, Evan. We just got married. I just adopted Maya. We're finally a real family. And I'm terrified that if I go to that appointment, they're going to find something, and all of this perfect happiness is going to disappear." Evan crossed the kitchen, turned her to face him. "So you're just going to avoid checkups forever? Hope that ignorance will protect you? I know it's not rational. It's not rational, and it's dangerous. And it's the exact fear-based thinking you've been teaching me to let go of. Claire, you can't control whether the cancer comes back by avoiding doctors. You can only control whether we catch it early enough to fight it." "I know that. Intellectually, I know that. But emotionally, I'm terrified. What if this is it? What if our happiness has an expiration date and going to that appointment reveals it? And what if it doesn't? What if you're completely fine and you've been torturing yourself with fear for nothing?" Claire's eyes filled with tears. "I can't lose this, Evan. I can't lose you and Maya and this life we've built. It matters too much." "Then fight for it. Go to the appointment. Face the fear instead of running from it. Isn't that what you told me on the bathroom floor before our wedding? That we can't let fear of potential loss steal the time we have?" "That's different." "How is it different?" "Because you were catastrophizing about hypothetical futures. This is real. The cancer was real. The possibility of it coming back is real. You're right, it is real. Which means you need real information, not imagined worst-case scenarios. Claire, please, make the appointment. Let me come with you. We'll face whatever we find together. She was crying fully now, her carefully maintained composure cracking. What if they find something? Then we'll deal with it, the same way we've dealt with everything else. Together, honestly, one day at a time. But we can't deal with it if we don't know about it. Maya appeared in the kitchen doorway, her expression concerned. Why is Mom crying? The word, Mom, still relatively new, hit both Evan and Claire like a reminder of everything at stake. Claire wiped her eyes, tried to compose herself. I'm okay, sweetie, just grown-up stuff. Are you sick again? I don't know. That's what we're figuring out. Maya crossed the kitchen and wrapped her arms around Claire's waist. If you're sick, we'll help you get better. That's what families do. The simple statement, delivered with 8-year-old certainty, seemed to break through Claire's fear in a way Evan's logic couldn't. You're right, Claire said softly, holding Maya close. That's exactly what families do. She called Dr. Patel the next morning and scheduled the appointment for the following week. The days leading up to it were tense, both Evan and Claire trying to maintain normalcy while privately catastrophizing about possibilities. They didn't talk about it much, both of them afraid that voicing their fears would somehow make them real. The morning of the appointment, Claire was quiet, her nervousness palpable. Evan had taken the day off work, and they'd arranged for Maya to stay with Ellen, not wanting to bring her to the hospital unless they had to. In the car, Claire reached for Evan's hand. I'm glad you're coming with me. Where else would I be? I know I've been avoiding this. I know it was stupid and potentially dangerous. I needed these months of happiness without fear hanging over them. Does that make sense? It makes perfect sense. But Claire, whatever we find out today, we face it together. That's not negotiable. The hospital was exactly as Evan remembered. The antiseptic smell, the fluorescent lights, the particular quality of time that moved differently in places where people waited for news that could change everything. They checked in at Dr. Patel's office and were taken back almost immediately. Dr. Patel greeted them with professional warmth, his expression giving nothing away. Claire, Mr. Brooks, thank you for coming in. Sorry for missing the appointment, Claire said quietly. I was scared. I understand. Many of my patients struggle with checkup anxiety. It's completely normal. He pulled up her file on his computer. Let's start with how you've been feeling. Any symptoms? Pain, fatigue, unusual changes? Nothing. I feel great, actually. Better than I have in years. That's good. But as you know, cancer doesn't always announce itself with symptoms, which is why regular monitoring is so important. I'm going to examine you, then we'll do blood work and imaging. The whole process should take a few hours. The examination was thorough and clinical. Then came blood draws and scans, and finally, the waiting, an hour that felt like days, sitting in an examination room with outdated magazines and inspirational posters, trying not to imagine worst-case scenarios. When Dr. Patel finally returned, his expression was neutral in a way that could mean anything. Well, he said, settling into his chair, I have your results. Evan felt Claire's hand tighten in his, her breathing shallow. The scans are clear. No signs of recurrence. Your blood work looks excellent. By all measures, you're still in full remission and doing beautifully. The relief was so intense it was almost painful. Claire started crying, laughing, her whole body shaking with the release of weeks of accumulated fear. Really? She managed. I'm okay? You're very okay. In fact, given how well you're doing, we can move to annual checkups instead of every 6 months, though I do need you to promise me you'll actually come to those annual appointments. I promise. I absolutely promise. Evan pulled Claire into his arms, feeling his own tears spill over. They'd been given more time, more certainty, more permission to stop waiting for the other shoe to drop and just live. Thank you, he said to Dr. Patel. Thank you so much. You're very welcome. Take care of each other. They walked out of the hospital into bright October sunshine, everything looking sharper and more vivid than it had on the way in. Claire stopped on the sidewalk, turned her face to the sun, and laughed with pure joy. I'm okay, she said again, testing the words. I'm actually okay. You are. And now you get to stop being scared and just be happy. I'm going to need practice at that. I've gotten too good at waiting for things to fall apart. Then we'll practice together. One day at a time, choosing to believe in good things instead of catastrophizing about bad ones. They picked up Maya from Ellen's house, and the moment she saw their faces, she knew. Mom's okay? Mom's perfectly okay, Claire confirmed, catching Maya in a hug. And I'm sorry for scaring you. It's okay. Being scared is normal. Grandma told me that brave people are still scared. They just do the thing anyway. Your grandma's very wise. That night, they celebrated with takeout and Maya's choice of movie. And when Maya finally went to bed, Evan and Claire found themselves on the back porch again, the place where so many important conversations had happened. I've been thinking, Claire said, wrapped in a blanket against the autumn chill, about fear and happiness and how we've been living. What about it? I think I've been so focused on not taking our happiness for granted that I haven't actually been enjoying it. I've been waiting for it to be taken away instead of being present for what we have. That's kind of been both our problems, hasn't it? We both know how quickly things can change, so we're constantly braced for impact instead of actually living. Exactly. But today, sitting in that waiting room, I realized something. All that fear, all that bracing for impact, it didn't protect me from anything. If the news had been bad, I would have been just as devastated as I would have been without the fear. The fear didn't serve any purpose except stealing my peace. So what do we do about it? We practice what we keep telling each other. We choose to be present. We notice when we're catastrophizing and bring ourselves back to what's actually true right now. We trust that we're strong enough to handle hard things if they come, so we don't need to waste energy preparing for disasters that might never happen. That sounds good in theory, harder in practice. Everything worth doing is harder in practice. Claire shifted to face him more directly. But I want to try. I want to actually enjoy our life instead of just being grateful it hasn't fallen apart yet. I want to make plans for the future without immediately thinking of all the ways they could be derailed. I want to live like we have time, because maybe we do. And if we don't, then at least we'll have spent the time we had being happy instead of being scared. Evan pulled her close, felt the steady beat of her heart against his chest. Okay, let's do that. Let's choose happiness. The months that followed were an exercise in practicing what they preached. When Evan found himself spiraling into worst-case scenarios, Claire would gently redirect him to the present. When Claire started avoiding something because of fear, Evan would remind her that running from fear didn't eliminate it, just prolonged it. They developed strategies, breathing exercises, reality checks, actively choosing trust over catastrophe. It wasn't perfect. There were still hard days, still moments of panic, still times when the trauma of loss and illness felt too heavy to carry. But they carried it together, and that made all the difference. Maya thrived in the stability they'd created. Her third-grade year was marked by excellent grades, deepening friendships, and increasingly sophisticated graphic design projects that Claire helped her develop. She talked about Sarah sometimes, asking questions about her first mom, sharing memories she wasn't sure were real or constructed. Claire never flinched from these conversations, never tried to replace Sarah or pretend she hadn't existed. "Tell me about when Mom was pregnant with me," Maya asked one evening while she and Claire were cooking dinner together. Claire glanced at Evan, who nodded encouragement. "I didn't know your mom then, sweetie, but your dad has stories. Want to ask him?" "I want both of you to tell me. Dad can tell the stories, and you can be there too, so it's like we're all sharing her." It became a new ritual, the three of them before bed sometimes, sharing Sarah's stories, keeping her memory alive while building new memories around it. Evan talked about Sarah's terrible singing voice and her incredible kindness, her fierce intelligence, and her terrible sense of direction. Maya laughed at the funny stories and cried at the sad ones, and Claire held space for all of it, never jealous, never threatened, just present. "Your mom would have loved Claire," Evan told Maya one night after a particularly emotional story session. "How do you know?" "Because they're alike in a lot of ways, both brave, both kind, both see the best in people even when it's hard. Your mom always said she wanted you to be surrounded by people who loved you fiercely. Claire does that." "Do you think Mom sent Claire to us, like from heaven or wherever she is?" Evan considered the question carefully. "I don't know if that's how it works, but I do think we found each other when we needed each other most. And whether that was luck or fate or your mom looking out for us, I'm grateful for it. Christmas came, their first as an official family, and they created new traditions while honoring old ones. They baked Sarah's favorite cookies using her recipes. They volunteered at a shelter, something Claire had suggested as a way to remember that their happiness existed alongside others' struggles. They exchanged gifts that were thoughtful rather than expensive, and Maya gave Claire a drawing she'd made, the three of them as stick figures holding hands, with a fourth figure watching from a cloud above, smiling. "That's my first mom," Maya explained to Claire. "She's happy we're a family." Claire cried, and Evan cried, and even Maya's eyes got suspiciously shiny. Winter melted into spring, and with it came Maya's 9th birthday. They threw another backyard party, this one even bigger than the last, and Evan watched Claire navigate it all with the practiced ease of someone who'd been doing this parenting thing for years rather than months. "She's really found her stride," Ellen observed, standing beside Evan as they watched Claire organize a game for the kids. "She really has." "You did good, sweetheart. Building this life, taking the risk, letting yourself love again. I'm proud of you." "Thanks, Mom. I'm proud of us too." In May, approaching the 1-year anniversary of their wedding, Evan planned a surprise. He'd been working with Maya for weeks, coordinating schedules and making secret arrangements. On the actual anniversary, he told Claire he was taking her out to dinner, instructed her to dress nice, and refused to reveal any additional details. The surprise wasn't dinner, it was a renewal of vows. A small ceremony in the same backyard where they'd married, attended by the same small group of family and friends, but this time with a year of marriage behind them, a year of choosing each other daily, a year of learning that love wasn't just the big moments, but the accumulation of small choices. Claire cried when she realized what was happening. "We just got married a year ago. We don't need to renew vows." "I know we don't need to, but I wanted to. I wanted to stand in front of everyone who matters and tell you again that I choose you, that this year has been the best of my life, that I'm grateful every single day that I walked into the wrong hospital room." They exchanged new vows, simpler than the first ones, but no less meaningful. "Claire, a year ago I promised to choose you every day. I have. I will. Forever. Thank you for being my partner, my best friend, Maya's mom. Thank you for teaching me that life after loss isn't just about surviving, it's about thriving. I love you more today than I did a year ago, and I'll love you even more tomorrow. Evan, a year ago you gave me a family when I'd convinced myself I didn't deserve one. You've been patient with my fears, supportive of my dreams, and the best partner I could imagine. You and Maya are the best things that ever happened to me. I promise to keep choosing courage over fear, presence over catastrophe, and this beautiful, messy, perfect life we're building together. I love you, I love our family, and I can't wait to see what the next year brings." They kissed, and Maya cheered, and the small group celebrated with cake and champagne and the comfortable joy of people who genuinely cared about each other. As the party wound down and the sun set over the backyard, Evan found himself exactly where he'd been a year ago, standing at the edge of the celebration, watching Claire and Maya together, feeling Marcus appear beside him. "Year 2, Marcus observed. "How does it feel?" "Like I finally stopped waiting for everything to fall apart and started trusting that it won't, or that if it does, we'll handle it." "That's growth, my friend." "Yeah, it really is." The months continued to unfold with the comfortable rhythm of established family life. Claire's graphic design business flourished, her client list growing as word spread about her talent. Evan got a promotion at work, more responsibility and better pay, which they used to start a college fund for Maya and take a family vacation to the beach. Maya excelled in school and in life, becoming more confident, more herself, more secure in the knowledge that she was loved by multiple people in multiple ways. She called Claire Mom without hesitation now, and sometimes when talking about Sarah would specify my first mom to differentiate, but never in a way that suggested competition or replacement. And Evan learned to live in the present. Not perfectly. He still had moments of panic, still caught himself catastrophizing, still felt the echo of Sarah's loss in unexpected moments. But he'd learned to recognize those moments for what they were. Grief and trauma that would always be part of him, but didn't have to define him. One evening in July, nearly 18 months after their wedding, Evan came home from work to find Claire and Maya in the kitchen, both of them looking suspicious. "What's going on?" he asked. "We have news," Maya announced. "Good news or bad news?" "The best news, tell him, Mom." Claire's smile was radiant. "I went to my annual checkup last week, and before you panic, yes, I actually went. And yes, I'm still cancer-free and healthy. But Dr. Patel said something interesting. He said given how well I'm doing, given how much time has passed since treatment, he'd feel comfortable clearing me for pregnancy if that was something we wanted to consider." Evan's heart stopped. "Pregnancy?" "We know it's a big decision," Claire continued quickly, "and we're not making any choices without you. But Maya and I were talking, and she said she'd like a little brother or sister, and I realized that I would too. That I'd love to have a baby with you, to grow our family, to give Maya a sibling. But only if you want that too." Evan looked at his daughter, who was practically bouncing with excitement, then at his wife, who looked hopeful and nervous in equal measure. "You want another baby?" he asked Maya. "I want a little sister, or a brother would be okay too, I guess, but mostly a sister." "And you're sure about this?" he asked Claire. "Pregnancy with your medical history, the risks. Dr. Patel says the risks are minimal and manageable. And yes, I'm sure. I never thought I'd get this chance, Evan. I never thought I'd have a family, let alone the possibility of growing one. But if you're not ready, if it's too much—" "It's not too much," Evan interrupted. "It's perfect. Let's have a baby." Maya shrieked with excitement, launching herself at both of them. Claire laughed and cried simultaneously, and Evan held both of them close, marveling at how life kept surprising him with new possibilities, new reasons to hope, new chapters he'd never imagined writing. The pregnancy happened quickly. Claire was pregnant by September, her due date set for late May. The 9 months were a study in controlled anxiety and mounting excitement. They told Maya immediately, who appointed herself official baby name consultant and pregnancy monitor. They told Ellen, who cried and immediately started knitting baby blankets. They told Sarah's parents, who were surprised but supportive, seeing it as life continuing rather than Sarah being replaced. Claire's pregnancy was textbook perfect. No complications, no scares, just steady growth and mounting anticipation. They found out at the 20-week ultrasound that they were having a girl, and Maya's excitement reached new heights. "I'm going to teach her everything," Maya declared, "graphic design and rock collecting and how to negotiate with Dad for extra dessert." "Maybe let her learn to walk first," Evan suggested. "Walking's boring. The important stuff is what matters." As Claire's due date approached, Evan found himself experiencing familiar anxiety in new contexts. Birth was dangerous, things could go wrong, but he'd learned to acknowledge the fear without letting it control him, to prepare for possibilities without catastrophizing about certainties. The baby came 2 days before her due date, in the early morning hours of a beautiful May day. Labor was long but uncomplicated, and at 6:47 a.m., Lily Sarah Brooks entered the world. 7 pounds, 3 ounces, with dark hair and her mother's eyes and lungs that proved she could make her presence known. Evan held his new daughter with shaking hands, overwhelmed by the tiny perfect human he and Claire had created, by the second chance at fatherhood he'd never thought he'd have. "She's perfect," he whispered. "She really is," Claire agreed, exhausted but radiant. "Sarah would have loved her." "She would have. And she'd have loved that we named her after her." When they brought Lily home, Maya was waiting with Ellen, practically vibrating with excitement. The moment she saw her baby sister, her eyes went wide. "She's so small." "You were this small once," Evan pointed out. "No way. I was never that tiny." Maya approached carefully, touching Lily's tiny hand with reverent gentleness. "Hi, baby sister. I'm Maya. I'm going to teach you everything important." And she did. Over the months that followed, Maya became the best big sister Evan could have imagined. Patient, gentle, endlessly entertained by even the smallest baby achievements. She narrated her day to Lily, showed her picture books, sang to her in a voice that was off-key but full of love. Claire took to motherhood with the same grace she'd brought to step-parenting, though the sleepless nights and constant demands of a newborn tested them both. But they navigated it together, splitting night feedings and diaper changes, supporting each other through exhaustion and uncertainty. The house was chaos, toys everywhere, schedules built around feeding times, laundry that never seemed to end. But it was also full of laughter and crying, of tiny milestones and ordinary moments, of a family that had been built piece by piece from loss and love and the courage to keep trying. One night, when Lily was 3 months old and finally sleeping for longer stretches, Evan found Claire standing over the crib, watching their daughter sleep. "What are you thinking about?" he asked softly. "About how none of this should have happened, how I was supposed to die alone in a hospital room, how you were supposed to be stuck in grief forever, how Maya was supposed to grow up with only one parent, and instead," she gestured at the sleeping baby, "at the life they'd built. Instead, we have this. We have this because you survived, because I walked into the wrong room, because we both chose to take risks when it would have been easier to stay safe. Best mistake you ever made." "Best decision," Even corrected. "Walking into that room might have been a mistake, but everything after was a choice. Choosing to leave flowers, choosing to go back, choosing to meet you, choosing to let you into our lives, choosing love over fear, again and again." Claire turned to face him, her eyes bright in the dim nursery light. "I love our life, Evan. Every messy, chaotic, beautiful moment of it." "Me too. Even the sleepless nights and the endless laundry. Especially those, because they mean we're here, we're together, we made it." They stood together in the quiet nursery, watching their daughter sleep, and Evan felt the full weight of gratitude for the journey that had brought them here. From a hospital room mistake to a family of 4, from survival to thriving, from loss to love that multiplied rather than replaced. The next morning, all 4 of them piled into Evan and Claire's bed for lazy weekend snuggles. Maya sandwiched between her parents, Lily sleeping on Claire's chest, and Evan watching all 3 of his girls with the bone-deep certainty that this messy, imperfect, absolutely perfect life was exactly where he was meant to be. "Dad?" Maya asked, her voice sleepy. "Yeah, Bug? Do you think our family is done growing now? Or might we get another baby?" Evan and Claire exchanged glances, both of them laughing. "Let's see how we do with this one first," Claire suggested. "That's parent speak for maybe," Maya observed. "It's parent speak for ask us again in a few years when we've had more sleep." "I can wait, but I think we should get a cat next." "Still no on the cat." "Worth a shot." They lay there together as morning light filtered through the curtains, a family built from wrong turns and right choices, from loss that didn't destroy and love that multiplied, and the daily practice of choosing presence over fear. Years later, when people asked Evan about how he'd met Claire, he'd tell them the truth, that he'd walked into the wrong hospital room and found everything he'd been missing without knowing he was looking for it. That sometimes the best things in life came from mistakes that weren't mistakes at all, just detours that led you exactly where you needed to be. And when they asked if he missed Sarah, if loving Claire meant forgetting his first wife, he'd tell them that the heart was bigger than people gave it credit for, that you could honor the past while building the future, love what you'd lost while embracing what you'd found, carry grief and joy simultaneously without one diminishing the other. Because that was the truth he'd learned in that wrong hospital room, the lesson Claire had taught him by surviving against odds and choosing love despite fear. That life after loss wasn't about moving on or getting over it or finding replacement happiness. It was about expanding, growing, letting your heart be big enough to hold both sorrow and celebration, memory and presence, what was and what could be. Evan Brooks had walked into the wrong door and found the right life. And every single day, he was grateful for the mistake that had led him home.